Ominous clouds hung over the city. The streets were deserted. The air itself seemed to be saturated with fear. There were hungry zombies hanging around the supermarket. There was terrible chaos all around. The bald monster devoured the human limb with gusto. Its faded eyes stared aimlessly. Some decent, non-aggressive zombie with something human left in him was walking calmly among the rising dead. You'd have to be too brave to wander into such a deadly crowd. Daredevil was on his way to the supermarket, probably looking to stock up on groceries. Seems like a bad time to be shopping. The supermarket is a mess. Walking corpses are trying to find something tasty to satisfy their immense hunger. But, apparently, simple cookies and sweet candies are not to their liking. This walking corpse looks a little like a living person, and his eyes seem a little sad and kind. The reanimated dead man turns out to be quite thrifty and tidy. He carefully chooses the necessary goods in the supermarket. Apparently, he is guided by his common sense. A zombie had a whole backpack full of different groceries. Suddenly, someone ordered him to leave the supermarket. The dead guy was about to leave the supermarket, but someone suddenly told him to stop. The zombie forgot to take something else for his invisible master, so he obediently returned and fulfilled another wish of the one he served. One of the reanimated corpses could not control his boundless hunger. His bloated stomach seemed about to explode from the enormous amount of food he had consumed. Only one zombie among this bloodthirsty crowd looked like a human. At least his actions were not chaotic and he was moving in a certain direction. My mouth is dry after the horror I saw. It's worth quenching your thirst drinking your favorite drink, and this is a fully alive human being. He has human instincts. He's dead tired, though. A young man has been training a zombie for a very long time, and now the reanimated corpse completely obeys him. Our main character's name is Ling Mo. He is a college student. Suddenly, half a month ago, a virus broke out that turned most normal people into zombies. They were hungry all the time, but they couldn't satisfy their hunger. The survivors were afraid to go outside. They could meet their gruesome deaths anywhere and any time. The zombies even attacked each other. They were unrestrained. However, Ling Mo soon realized that he could tame the living dead. The young man had a unique gift. He could communicate with a zombie and control it like a puppet. At first, it was very difficult to control a puppet without proper experience. That is why he sometimes found himself on the verge of death. At this stage, Ling Mo can completely control one zombie. The walking dead obey him unconditionally, but only within a certain distance. The gifted Ling Mo meets sunsets and sunrises with his servant. They're practically friends. The zombie tamer wanted to develop his abilities to control many reanimated corpses easily and quickly. He also longed to find the girl who had always been in his heart. Now the life of Ling Mo and his zombies is all about dangerous adventures and traveling. In the morning, they must leave this place. There's someone to find. This girl is quite attractive, but it looks like she's also turned into a zombie. Is there any humanity left in this beautiful body? It's a perfect calm day. The city is flooded with sunlight. The cell phone's ringing non-stop, but the boy continues to sleep. He doesn't want to part with his sweet dreams. The young man tries to overcome his laziness, trying to get a cell phone. Someone on the phone said it was time to wake up. It's noon. The guy finally got a call back from his dear girlfriend, Ye Lian. She said she's on her way to his place by bus, and she's bringing delicious food with her. Ling Mo had a nice conversation with Ye Lian. He said that the girl was very kind and caring. Suddenly, the boy thought for a moment. He wanted to say something important, but he didn't dare. He didn't know what words to say. It was a personal request. Ling Mo wanted the girl to do something for him. The dumbfounded guy did not even have time to voice his request. However, the girl had already stated that she was ready to do anything for her loved one. A teary-eyed Ling Mo said that he loved Ye Lian very much. He thought she was the most beautiful girl in the world. But suddenly there was consternation on the boy's face. He started screaming wildly. Ye Lian desperately asked on the phone to save her. She seems to be in danger. The boy shouted fearfully. However, no one answered him. A happy, carefree life has cracked. All dreams and plans have been shattered. Something has happened that can't be undone. The young man repeated his girlfriend's name very often. He thought about her all the time. A dejected Ling Mo reproached himself for sleeping too much. He still had a lot of things to do. This is how a tame zombie meets its master. Ling Mo is no longer intimidated by this sight. For a moment, the guy let his guard down and the reanimated dead man was out of control. So before going to bed, Ling Mo always chained up his zombie like a watchdog. It was urgent to establish communication with the zombie. This way, the rebellious dead could be tamed again. Soon the zombie was once again submissive and affectionate, like a sweet puppy. He no longer growled at his master. The guy let the zombie off the leash and told him to follow him. The city was disturbed by the heart-rending screams of the dead. They could not satisfy their hunger. Ling Mo walked down the street where Ye Lian's house was. He wanted to see his girlfriend as soon as possible. The town square was filled with zombies. There was no place for an apple to fall. Ling Mo couldn't control all those corpses. The boy heard a great rumble. The zombies were probably smashing something again to find food. They were just mutilated dead bodies. There was no human soul in these bodies. In an instant, the zombies rushed to run in the same direction. Perhaps they smelled something tasty. The zombies' attention was diverted, so the guy decided not to miss this chance. Ling Mo and his tame zombie were in the entryway of the house. They managed to escape from the angry walking corpses. The guy thought that people only attracted zombies with their panic and screaming. Hysteria doesn't do any good. The zombies were chasing two boys who were frightened and lost their composure. They continuously screamed and begged to be rescued. However, the screaming attracted more dead people. The power of zombies is uncontrollable and enormous. They can destroy an iron fence in a matter of seconds. Here comes the long-awaited zombie food, but it's hardly enough to feed a whole army of the walking dead, who are always haunted by the feeling of hunger. Ling Mo could only watch as the zombies devoured their victims. He was too weak to resist the army of resurrected corpses. The boy watched calmly as the zombies tore into the flesh of living people. He didn't feel any horror. Why had he become so insensitive? A surprised Ling Mo couldn't understand why he felt satisfaction in seeing zombies eating living flesh. Could it be that the connection with his zombies was somehow affecting him? However, right now, the guy wasn't too worried about his feelings. The most important thing for him was to find Ye Lian. The master ordered his zombie to go outside and look for Ye Lian. The girl's house was nearby. Therefore, she could be somewhere nearby. There wasn't a living soul on the street. There were rampaging zombies everywhere. The dead boy obeyed his master's orders. He searched diligently for the missing girl. Suddenly, the walking dead saw a car accident. Perhaps there were living people on the bus, or had they already turned into zombies? Ling Mo ordered the puppet to inspect the bus. The zombie unconditionally began to obey his master's order. The guy didn't understand why the dead man had stopped and was scrutinizing everything around him. Was there someone around? The 618th bus was at the epicenter of the accident. It was the bus Ye Lian was riding on. The boy was frightened and surprised. He couldn't believe his eyes. Ling Mo seemed to have seen something he never wanted to see or believe. A zombie was trying to get into the interior of the bus. Apparently the door couldn't be opened. So he climbed through the window. There was a mountain of bloody corpses in the interior of the bus. It didn't look like they were mutilated like that. Not just because of the accident. There was a bloody girl walking around the cabin. She looked like Ye Lian. Apparently Ling Mo didn't immediately recognize his girlfriend. He saw some kind of bloodthirsty, merciless monster. The furious beast immediately attacked the puppet that Ling Mo was controlling. The beast seemed to be ready to tear apart anything that moved. Can the guy find his real girlfriend? And how will their relationship develop? The bloody monster was too aggressive, and its strength was uncontrollable and colossal. With one blow, this monster was able to pierce the dead torso of the puppet. Ling Mo finally realized that his girlfriend had turned into a real monster. He couldn't understand when and how it happened. Apparently Ye Lian was infected with a virus. She was slowly losing all human senses. It was urgent to save his puppet. If the guy lost the tamed dead man, Ye Lian could easily sneak away and disappear forever. Guy didn't want to lose Ye Lian. It was the most precious person to him. Ling Mo realized that he had to take control of his unrestrained girl at any cost. Then she would be saved. The guy concentrated and tried to contact Ye Lian's soul. It was not an easy task, but it had to be done urgently. Otherwise, the girl would die forever. Ling Mo started searching for his girlfriend's soul. Only by finding her soul could he create a close bond with her. Ye Lian's soul was finally found. The guy easily recognized her. This soul was fragile, tender, affectionate, and she seemed confused and sad. Ling Mo wanted to bind a soul to him, but could he do it? It's hard to keep someone's soul on a leash. The girl's soul is slumbering. It's not long before the guy can make a connection with her, but the beast does not slumber, and it is not easy to tame it, to curb it. Ye Lian's soul pushed the guy away, and the connection with her was quickly being lost. What to do? On the bus, the monster continued to bully the poor zombie that Ling Mo was controlling. The situation was getting out of control. Ye Lian's soul continued to resist, and this resistance was quite conscious. It seems Ye Lian's mind can still be restored, and the guy decided to do just that first. But if you don't get your mind back, the girl will be a monster forever, and no one can control her actions, not even herself. Ling Mo was determined not to give up. He believed in his gift and his own strength. The binding thread was lost and then reappeared. The boy's strength was running out. With a little more effort, everything would work out. Ling Mo fought desperately and believed that he would be able to save the person he loved. The girl's peaceful soul behaved calmly and no longer resisted. The boy was now in complete control of her. A mutilated corpse lay in the passenger compartment of the bus. Would he ever get back on his feet? Ling Mo had lost almost all of his strength, but he was glad that he was able to establish a connection with the girl. Now she wouldn't run away from him. The boy ordered the girl to go urgently to him, and she had to give up the delicious lunch and run to her master. The girl quickly appeared at the Lord's call. She was as beautiful and attractive as ever. Ling Mo couldn't understand why his girlfriend had brought a zombie head. She was acting strangely. The satisfied guy let the girl behave as she wanted, and did not impose his tastes and preferences on her. To the average person, it's something disgusting and incomprehensible, but to a zombie, it's a real delicacy. It's the kind of food that revitalizes reanimated corpses, and the zombies are happy to eat it. The girl was eager to try this particular strange food. Now she doesn't need candy and cookies. No doubt the guy was intimidated by the girl's appetite and strange tastes, but he let her have her lunch. It seems to be a heavenly delight for some. It's a treat you can't find in supermarkets. The strangest thing was that Ye Lian's pleasure was easily and quickly felt by the guy. After all, they were connected. Apparently the unusual dish had completely restored Ye Lian's strength, and she was shining with happiness. Ling Mo began to realize that he wasn't the only one who could influence the girl, but she also has a tremendous influence on him. What will the close bond between two people in love lead to? What will win out? Human feelings or creepy zombie instincts? The protagonist stood looking at his girlfriend with excitement. It was hard for him to see her become a zombie. Lin Mo was very unpleasantly surprised at what his girlfriend had become. He called out her name. The guy reached out his hand and touched the girl's face. He told her she smelled nice. Ling Mo said confidently to his lover that he would find a way to make things right. The guy felt the waves of spiritual connection between him and the girl begin to break. Lillian looked at the guy with an angry gaze with red eyes. Zombie girl accelerated and kicked the guy with all her might. Lin Mo staggered. The protagonist is frightened to realize that the spiritual bond has weakened. For this reason, the alien girl wants to kill him. The protagonist was completely focused. He needed to calm his girlfriend down somehow. Zombie girl's hand was heading towards the protagonist to grab him. Lin Mo activated the spiritual connection and was able to stop the girl. He was glad that he had backed up in time. The protagonist told the fun alien's girlfriend to come with him as she needed to be changed. A guy and his traveler found a clothing store. It was full of zombies. Lin Mo carefully looked from around the corner and noticed that there were 4 zombies nearby. The guy looked at his girlfriend and noticed surprise that she showed a strong urge to kill. Lin Mo thought to himself that he needed to get the pill in the head of some zombie. This thing will help the girl alien. The protagonist reached into his holster to pull out a large knife. He needed it to attack. The guy turned to his girlfriend Elian and suggested she attack together. The protagonist turned to the side and noticed his girlfriend lunging at one zombie. The Lian girl mercilessly crushed and finished off the zombie she had gotten her hands on. The protagonist rejoiced to himself. He even trembled his knife in his hands. He noted that the girl was powerfully dealing with zombies. The guy thought excitedly to himself that if he didn't get in the way as soon as possible, the Lian girl would get out of control. While she was smashing the zombies around her with all her might, the guy had to find an antidote for the girl, and it would not be easy at all. The main character yelled to his girlfriend that he would help. He kicked one female zombie with all his might, after which the guy stabbed the zombie who ran up to him in the head with his knife. The protagonist and his girlfriend were slaying the evil around them. Lin Mo and his girlfriend were killing zombies that were near the store. After a successful battle, the protagonist slipped his knife into his holster. The guy was really tired. While his girlfriend was getting pills out of zombie bodies, Ilianas consumed the reddish pills with gusto and gusto. The boy thought that this was harder for him to deal with than he had thought. When his girlfriend eats the pill, his personal physical strength increases. The main character went into a clothing store with his girlfriend. She needed a new outfit. Lin Mo looked around carefully, searching for something suitable for his girlfriend. The protagonist walked between the rows of clothes and considered a dress for the alien girl. Then the guy a little shyly walked over to the counter and found some matching lingerie for his girlfriend. A guy took his zombie girlfriend to the bathroom. He needed to clean her up. The main character opened the water faucet. He wet a towel to wipe the girl. Lin Mo excitedly held out his hands to his girlfriend and said she got a little dirty. The main character decided to help his girlfriend change. He started to take off her dress. Lin Mo still felt shy. He carefully removed the clothes from Elian. Looking at his girlfriend, the horny protagonist realized that she had changed, but she was still human. The next morning, the main character woke up in his room. It was already daytime outside the window. Lin Mo lay there thinking to himself about yesterday's zombie skirmish and what he should do about his girlfriend. The protagonist saw the alien girl sitting across from him on the couch. He got excited. The guy told his girlfriend that the thing she ate yesterday was keeping in touch with him in his dreams somehow. The protagonist heard his girlfriend's stomach rumble. Lin-mo realized that such a sound from the girl said that she was hungry. Elian looked questioningly at the guy. The protagonist asked his girlfriend in surprise, "Is she still hungry?" Elian grabbed the guy by his clothes. The main character, along with his girlfriend, regularly killed and destroyed zombies. The girl always took red pills out of the bodies of dead zombies and ate them one by one. After a while, for some unknown reason, Elian fainted. Lin-mo started using a neighboring house as a shelter. Lin-mo could sense with a special connection that the properties of the pills were somehow affecting not only the girl, but also him. A guy has to be alert and on guard at all times so he doesn't lose control of his girlfriend. Girl Elian had been lying down and sleeping in the room on the bed for a long time. The guy left her alone. After a long rest, the alien girl opened her eyes. She lay silent. The main character opened the door and walked into the room. He asked his girlfriend, "How does she feel?" The guy looked at the girl sitting next to him and was very upset. He felt really bad for his girlfriend's out of sorts. The girl's eyes were no longer red. She looked more energetic than before. Lin-mo became agitated. He decided that the changes in the girl's body were evolution. She was devouring her own kind to evolve herself. The guy started to gently wipe his girlfriend with a wet towel. He thought to himself that it was very good that the girl looked more like a human being. Lin-mo wanted to hide in the hills with her after finding the girl, but she would starve there. It is more profitable to settle down in the city, as there are many zombies around. The main character decided to check his arsenal. He had with him food, a flashlight, a rope, and a knife. Lin-mo picked up the knife in his hand. He decided that this knife had become too blunt and useless. After some thought, the protagonist remembered that the Van Lin family was famous for making handmade swords. Lin-mo thought that the store must be somewhere nearby. The girl Wan Lin was very popular. For this reason, someone had to take care of her. The guy thought that the Van Lin girl was very weak and fragile. She might have already turned into a zombie by now. The main character called his girlfriend and said they needed to go to the store to get a good gun. At that time, there was a young girl with her boyfriend on the top floor of the store. Her friend was looking around from binoculars. The guy excitedly called out to his girlfriend Van Lin and warned her that someone was coming this way. The protagonist at this time and his girlfriend approached the broken sword store. A worried girl asked who was coming to them now. The guy answered that the survivors might be coming to them. Van Lin girl looked through the binoculars and said the guy looked familiar to her. Scared guy wanted to warn the guests that there were zombies in the store. Van Lin explained that it was not allowed to shout, for it would attract zombies. The boy warned that the guests could take the short swords. Van Ling replied that the swords were in the back of the store. If the past people get there, it will be a miracle. After that, the Van Ling girl sadly said that if the guests could still get their hands on the swords, it meant that fate was on their side. At this time, the main character and his girlfriend were walking through the store. Lin-mo was looking for the workshop inside. Then the protagonist found the door to the workshop. He decided to go in himself. He pulled the handle and realized that the door was already locked from the inside. The protagonist listened carefully. He asked if there was anyone at the door. After that, the guy was really freaked out by a powerful bang inside the door. The main character got scared and realized there was a zombie behind the door. He yelled to the girl to be careful. At this time, the zombie from inside kicked the door with a powerful blow and wanted to grab the terrified protagonist with his hand. Lin-mo excitedly and fearfully realized that he would now have to fight against the snarling zombie. The protagonist watched with great fear as the zombie put his hand through the hole in the door. Lin-mo shouted excitedly to the girl to get behind him. The guy pulled out a knife to fight back. Swinging with all his might, the protagonist chopped off the arm of the monster that wanted to grab him. The zombie practically broke down the door. Lin-mo kicked the door with all his might. Then Lin-mo jumped on the door to crush the evil zombie. The main character shouted very angrily at the monster to get lost. The zombie gathered his strength and with a mighty kick of his foot he flung the door and the guy away from him. Lin-mo was lying by the door. He was recovering from a severe blow from a zombie. The monster rushed at the protagonist from behind. The alien girl directed her gaze at the zombie. The monster sensed something. The zombie, after a loud scream, wanted to turn around. After that, the lion girl pierced through the zombie's body with a powerful punch of her hand. The monster wasn't hurt in any way. He got even more angry and turned around to face the girl. Then the monster began to punch and smash the wall with all his might. The protagonist realized that the mutant zombie was very strong. The monster prepared to attack the girl. Lin-mo excitedly rushed to help his girlfriend. The guy accelerated at high speed up the wall to jump on top of the monster. Lin-mo flew overhead with a burst of speed at the zombie to strike it with his knife. The guy managed to dodge and stab the zombie in the head with his combat knife. The protagonist sat on the floor exhausted. He said that the monster was very close to hurting him. Linmo looked at his hand on the floor. He saw someone else's bloody hand lying nearby. The guy was really startled and scared. He decided to look around. Linmo looked around and was horrified to see a huge number of human bodies around. The main character thought sadly to himself that the mutant zombie had killed a lot of people. The guy saw his girlfriend come up behind him. He turned around and called her by her name Elian with surprise. The girl walked over to the corpse of the zombie as if nothing had happened and started digging around in his head. After digging a bit from the monster's head, he pulled out a green pill. The main character grabbed the girl's arm. He shouted to her that he wanted to check the pill first. Linmo looked at the pill and noticed that it had a much brighter color than normal zombies. For the same reason, the concentration of the virus might also be higher. The guy excitedly decided to himself that he needed to find a place to rest first. His girlfriend might eat the pill and pass out. The main character walked up to a wall where many swords were hanging. He decided to find a weapon for himself. Linmo picked up the sword and took it out of its sheath. He said admiringly that this weapon was very big. The guy looked at the collection of edged weapons. He said that the Van Sword store fully deserved its reputations. After that, the protagonist decided to walk closer to the sword stand, but heard something unusual clattering under his shoes. Linmo tapped the tiles from below and realized with excitement that he had found a hidden spot. The protagonist pulled back a tile and found a hiding place with a dagger in it. The guy decided to himself that he would take the dagger. If the weapon was hidden, it must have been amazing. The protagonist slipped the precious dagger he found into his leg holster. Linmo said very cheerfully to his girlfriend that they could go as today was a harvest day. The protagonist and his companion walked out of the Van Sword store. The Van girl was very excited and angry because her dagger had been taken away. The guy asked excitedly, "What happened?" Girl Van sadly said that the guests in the store killed the zombie mutant and took away her favorite dagger. A very annoyed Van girl shouted that the stolen dagger was bullwiped by her personally. She only came here for this dagger. The guy shouted to his girlfriend to forget about the dagger. He also added that the people who came were not ordinary, as they were able to kill the zombie mutant. Wang's girlfriend angrily shouted for the guy to help her catch up with the guests who had left the store. The guy calmly told the girl that the dagger was gone. He suggested that she go out to look for survivors. The girl Van said haughtily that she hoped the survivors would die. After calming down a bit, Girl Van said that her cousin also inherited something from her grandfather. She suggested to go to her. Smiling evilly, the Van girl said as she cursed to death the one who took her dagger. The main character was resting at the time. Suddenly he sneezed a lot. Linmo thought that he couldn't catch a cold at a time like this given his physical attributes. The guy walked out the door of the room and spilled disinfectant on the floor. It was supposed to help, so as not to attract other zombies. Linmo thought that his method with sanitizing might only work in places where there were few zombies. After that, the guy took out a green pill. He told the Elian girl that she could take this thing. Girl Elian with gusto and almost reflexively opened her mouth to receive the pill. The protagonist realized he couldn't look at it quietly as the girl grabbed the pill from his hands with her tongue. The Lian girl swallowed the pill. The thing started to take effect inside her. Linmo quite unexpectedly felt very sick. His body felt as if it had a chill. The main character was on his hands and knees. He felt very bad. At that time, the girl decided to come closer to him. Then the protagonist fearfully and shrilly called the girl by name. The protagonist was lying motionless on the floor of a house in an apartment in a large building. Molin was resting on the floor, unmoving in an unconscious state. The awakening was abrupt. The guy opened his eyes and began to slowly pass into himself. A little coming to his senses, Lingmo was very much startled and frightened. He couldn't realize how long he had been lying there. Linmo stood up and sat down on the floor. He clearly realized that he had simply fallen asleep. Suddenly something caught the guy's attention. He remembered something important. Linmo looked around and excitedly called out to his girlfriend Elian. The protagonist thought to himself fearfully that the girl might have gotten out of control. Linmo concentrated and realized that the connection between him and the girl had not yet been broken. The guy was advancing his thread of spiritual connection through the building. He felt his spiritual ability become stronger. The main character noticed the girl coming down the stairs. Elian was active only during battles with zombies. The guy couldn't understand why the girl was moving on her own today. The guy walked down the hall and came up to the girl. She was standing by the window. Elian Mo was very surprised. He noticed that the Elian had undergone some changes. The girl stood near the window. She looked out at the street with a realized and dreamy gaze. The main character was very surprised. He shouted loudly to his girlfriend that she had recovered. Lin Mo ran up to the girl and happily hugged her from behind. He kept repeating her name. The guy stood behind the girl and kept repeating excitedly that it was really great. The protagonist turned his girlfriend around and looked at her face. Elian continued to remain silent. Lin Mo thought sadly to himself. He had already thought that the girl had become completely normal. Boy. Looking at his girlfriend, he wondered if she had been able to recover her memory. The boy looked tenderly at his girlfriend and said that at least she could move on her own now. The main character called out to his girlfriend to follow him. Lin Mo added that the girl will return to normal life, if she develops. The guy noticed that there was a huge crowd of feral and dangerous zombies roaming the street. The alien girl ran outside and started hitting zombies with her skills. The protagonist, looking at his girlfriend, realized that evolution had made her instincts stronger. She chopped the zombies into pieces without any emotion. In her eyes, the monsters were like inferior creatures. Lin Mo watched as his companion headed towards him. He wondered how the girl would react when she encountered real people. The guy decided to himself that he would be able to prevent his girlfriend's attacks, thanks to a special control ability. Suddenly, the protagonist heard human voices in the distance. He was surprised that there might be survivors nearby. Lin Mo looked to the side and saw a few people near a broken storefront preparing to repel the zombie attack. The guy with the bat was standing next to his girlfriend, who had a sword hanging from her belt. The girl wasn't afraid. She was confident and prepared to crush the zombies around her. Without wasting time, the girl drew her sword from its sheath and prepared to bravely kill the zombies around her. With deft and quick movements, the girl chopped the zombie into pieces. After that, the girl turned to her friend and told him excitedly that they needed to go back to the store. A boy with green hair and a backpack behind his back shouted to his girlfriend that he agreed. The girl and the guy ran inside the store together. It was full of zombies. Without any consternation, the girl confidently smashed the zombies around her with her sword. The protagonist watched the girl with the sword closely and decided there was something about her. Lin Mo, looking at the stranger, he thought that the girl was not only skilled in combat but also not afraid of zombies. Her body emanated confidence. The guy turned around and looked at his girlfriend. He decided that the stranger might have special powers. After a little thought, Lin Mo decided that he needed to mind his own business, at which time the guy at the store begged and pleaded with the protagonist to help him. The main character didn't want to go to the store with his girlfriend by his side. After that, the guy from the store called Lin Mo again. The protagonist turned and excitedly and grudgingly asked the guy in the store, "Is the guy joking?" Lin Mo commanded his girlfriend to stand behind him and give him the opportunity to fight the monsters. The protagonist decided that if the stranger really has special abilities, she could learn the true essence of a Lian. The protagonist snatched up a huge dagger. He shouted belligerently that he should handle the zombies himself. The stranger was able to pierce the monster with her sword. She shouted to her friend to be quiet, or he would attract more zombies. The guy with the baton dodged another monster and shouted to his girlfriend that the main character could help them. The girl turned around and looked outside. There, the main character was starting to fight against the monsters. Lin Mo was fearlessly smashing zombies. At the same time, a female monster ran up to him. The guy activated his magical lash against the woman to stop her. The main character then used his huge dagger to stab the female zombie. Due to the fact that the main character's abilities have been improved, he was able to control 3 zombies at the same time. Lin Mo was able to stop the zombies and kill while he controlled them. The surprised guy shouted to his girlfriend named Shanna that the main character fights very cool. At this time, the Shanna girl swung her sword to pierce the head of another monster. After a powerful punch from the Shanna girl, the monster was fatally struck. Shanna looked at her friend and said she wasn't concerned with what he said. The guy conciliatingly replied to his girlfriend that they had someone who could help them. After that, the guy ran and yelled to the Shanna that they needed to get out of here. At this time, the Shanna girl was silently and excitedly watching the protagonist as he dealt with the zombies. The guy cheerfully called the main character over to him. He yelled out that he and the girl were here. The protagonist turned around and saw his new acquaintances. A huge horde of zombies was rushing after them. After that, the guy grabbed Lin Mo's arm and shouted for him to follow him. After a run, the protagonist, along with his girlfriend and his new acquaintances, hid around the corner. Shanna peeked out from around the corner and said that they had temporarily disposed of their pursuers for now. The guy smiled and thanked the protagonist for his help. Lin Mo replied that he shouldn't. The guy excitedly was telling that Elian Mo and his girlfriend are very cool. He added that Elian has good stamina as well as his girlfriend Shanna. Shanna turned around and angrily told her friend Liu Yuhao that she was not his girlfriend. Liu's boyfriend replied calmly that they were classmates. The guy Liu turned to his new acquaintances and offered to come in and relax. He added that they had plenty of beer. The main character thanked the guy and said they had more to do. Lin-mo decided to himself that he and his girlfriend should have less contact with the survivors. Liu grabbed the protagonist and suggested they go on another vacation. Shanna told her friend not to force their new acquaintances. At that time, the Shanna girl saw something very important. She looked at the protagonist excitedly. The girl rushed fearfully towards the protagonist. She eyed his weapon sideways. Lin-mo was surprised and amazed. He watched the Shanna girl's actions with interest. After that, Shanna fell to the ground in a bow before the protagonist. Liu asked his girlfriend in amazement, "What is she doing?" Shanna asked the protagonist in astonishment, "Where did he get the dagger from?" Lin-mo told her interlocutor that it was none of her business. The Shanna girl calmed down a bit. She decided to question the guy one more time. Shanna excitedly asked the protagonist to tell her where he got the dagger. Lin-mo replied grudgingly that he got the dagger from the sword store. Shanna was very surprised that the guy was in Juan's sword store. The protagonist asked the interlocutor with interest, "How does she know that?" Shanna's girlfriend was very hesitant to answer. She was contemplating what to say to the guy. Shanna looked closely at the dagger. She said, "All the people in the gun store are dead." Lin-mo said grudgingly to his new acquaintance to stop staring at his dagger. Shanna hesitated. She looked at the main character and his girlfriend for a while. After that, Shanna said cheerfully to the protagonist that his girlfriend doesn't mind at all. Shanna smiled, snuggled up, and hugged Elian. She cheerfully asked her new acquaintance if she was right. The alien girl became agitated and angry. The guy noticed that his girlfriend's eyes glowed red. The protagonist thought excitedly and told his girlfriend telepathically not to get angry. The alien girl relaxed. Her eyes were their usual gray color. The main character told the Shanna girl that his girlfriend couldn't talk. Shanna apologized and said she was sorry that Elian was mute. Shanna Vuzes then took her new acquaintance by the hand and told her to come and rest in their room. Shanna then looked cheerfully at the protagonist and told him to go and rest with her. Shanna led her new acquaintance. Liu's boyfriend happily led the protagonist along. Shanna cheerfully offered the new acquaintances a chat. Shan led her new acquaintances to an apartment in a large and high-rise building. Shan knocked on the apartment door and asked to be let in. Liu's boyfriend told his new friends that the place was small, but it was clean and safe inside. The girl from inside the apartment opened the door and rushed towards Shan's girlfriend. The girlfriend was very happy to see Shan in front of her. She greeted her. The girl saw the new guests and asked Shan, "Did she and Liu Guy bring 2 more?" The girl asked, "What was today's harvest like?" Liu replied that they picked up stuff from the supermarket on South Street. The protagonist scrutinized the room and the people they'd gotten into. Lin-mo thought to himself that there were a lot of people in this house. There were guys and girls everywhere. The guy wanted to introduce his new acquaintance to everyone here. Liu asked cheerfully to the main character, "What is his name?" Lin-mo said his name without any emotion. The main character pointed to his girlfriend and told everyone present that her name was Elian. Liu's boyfriend told the people around him that the main character helped them today. That's the reason they invited him to dine with them. One of the students was very much surprised at what he heard from the Ling guy. The student said that along with the Liu guy was his girlfriend Shanna. He asked how could the protagonist have helped them. The girl told Liu Xin guy not to be rude to the main character. The guest came to have dinner with them. Liu excitedly told those around him that they knew nothing about the main character. Liu Xin replied grudgingly so Leo wouldn't be so kind. There isn't enough food for everyone as it is. The Liu guy turned to his girlfriend Shane and motioned for her to say something in support of him. Shana girl was silent. She was looking at the protagonist and thinking about something of her own. Lin-mo looked at the Shanyu girl and decided. She still remembered that he was rude to her. The main character looked at the people around him. He figured they just wanted to make fun of him. The main character decided to leave. He told people he wasn't going to be a freeloader. The Liu guy stopped the protagonist. He asked, "Does he think he's a brave man?" After that, Liu angrily told the protagonist that he had brought a girl with him and asked can he feed her. Lin-mo gave the Liu boy a long and angry look. He was silent and didn't say anything in response. After a brief pause, the protagonist accelerated and also silently soared upwards. The girl Shanna was very surprised and scared. She followed the protagonist with excitement. Lin-mo jumped up to the Liu boy very quickly. He looked at him very angrily and with great judgment, after which the protagonist grabbed the student by his clothes and lifted him above the ground. The Liu guy was really pissed off. He was looking at the protagonist with hatred, and then the protagonist punched the student in the face. The surrounding people looked at the protagonist with fear and excitement. Lin-mo said threateningly to Liu guy that he would hit him again if he heard an offensive word. The Liu guy turned fearfully to the Shanna warrior girl for help. Shanna asked the protagonist to let the student go. Lin-mo demanded from the guy to apologize. Shanna reminded the main character that he already hit the guy Liu. Lin-mo demanded from the guy again to apologize. The Liu guy was very annoyed and indignant. He didn't understand why he had to apologize. The main character punched the guy in the face again with all his might. The student was very angry. He was outraged that no one was helping him. Sean said to Lu Shin guy to apologize since it was all his dirty mouth's fault. The Lu guy was really pissed off. He wanted to kick out the protagonist to save the common foods. None of his friends stood up for him. Lu realized that no one would help him. That's why he apologized to the protagonist. Linmo calmly and without emotion let go of the student. Lu slumped down on the floor without strength. At that time, a guy ran up to the main character with beer cans. He said he was sorry. The main character asked Lu, what kind of people live with them in the apartment? The guy replied that his classmates from the boarding school were next to him. He added that he hoped that Linmo would help them out. The protagonist left saying that he didn't want to waste his time with parasites. Shauna excitedly suggested to the protagonist that he should stay the night. The protagonist turned around and said they could find a place to rest in the city. Then Shanna grabbed the password's arm. She yelled at him not to leave. Linmo turned around and asked the girl very unhappily, what does she want? Shanna was silent. She pondered over what to say to the protagonist. Shauna then excitedly told the main character that he was experienced in fighting zombies. She asked that he help them. The main character turned around and told the strictly Shan girl that he was refusing her offer. Shan got really excited. She yelled to the guy that she hadn't even said anything yet. Lingmo told the girl to let him go. Shan was very excited and annoyed. Shan informed the guy that he had some skills and asked why he didn't want to help them. The protagonist released his hand from the girl's hand and decided to explain everything to her. Linmo said unequivocally that he wouldn't help if the case involved parasites. He pointed to the guys in the apartment. The main character told the Shan girl unequivocally that he wouldn't feed her friends. Shan clarified with the guy, would he help her if it wasn't related to the rest of the people? Linmo said he never said such a thing. Shan said that they were students from school number 3 in X City. The boy said he had heard about this boarding school. The girl said that there were still some of their classmates on the internet. A very excited Shan asked the main character to help them get to school. The protagonist slid his hand towards Shan and asked, what will he get? The girl and her friend Lu were very surprised at this question. The protagonist asked, surprised at his new acquaintance, did she really think he was working for free? Liu tragically shouted that people in times of disaster should help each other. Linmo replied that there was no order and morality in the world at present. Shan slyly told the guy that he had already gotten what he wanted. The guy got the dagger that her cousin Wang Ling had forged. The protagonist grabbed the handle of the dagger. He remembered the name of the girl Wang Lin. Linmo, looking at the dagger, thought excitedly that it was forged by a skinny girl Wang Lin. The guy joked that he felt sorry that the girl died so young. Shan said that they learned blacksmithing from their grandfather. She added that the dagger in the guy's possession is a prepayment. After that, Shan said that the alien girl could stay with her classmates. The protagonist said fearfully that his girlfriend would stay with him. He held her close to him. Shan said cheerfully that the guy has a beautiful friend and he should protect her. The protagonist thought that there must be a lot of zombies left at the boarding school, and the people left there are most likely already dead. Linmo looked at the Shan girl with great interest and thought, is she really so persistent or is she just stupid? The protagonist grabbed the dagger. He decided to agree to help the Shan girl. Lu's boyfriend told his friends excitedly that the protagonist had agreed to help their classmates who stayed at the boarding school. One girl timidly said that there were a lot of zombies left at the orphanage and they really should help. Shauna excitedly said that they have discussed this before. She added that she will come back to save her classmates. Shayna told her friends that the classmates had their backs and saved them from the zombies. The pigtailed girl was silent. She realized that the Shauna girl was completely right. The guy with the glasses said that if they left their classmates at boarding school and didn't come back, it would be very selfish. The guy with the glasses got very excited and told the Shauna girl that they were all going to go together. The conversation was interrupted by the protagonist. He shouted menacingly to those around him that he disagreed with what they were saying. The guy with glasses asked the protagonist, why doesn't he agree? Linmo explained that the students have no fighting skills and would be easy prey for zombies. Shanna told the protagonist that he should not worry about the safety of the students. By Linmo, need help with a difficult situation. The protagonist told the Shane girl calmly that he agreed with what she said. The students were talking excitedly amongst themselves. They didn't know what they should do. The guy with glasses shouted confidently to Shauna not to worry about them. They could defend themselves if they had weapons. The protagonist told the students to go to bed and rest. They'll leave tomorrow morning. Shauna's girlfriend yelled for the protagonist to stop. She said that Alian would spend the night with them. The girls. The protagonist looked at Shania in silence. He pondered her words about the Elian girl. The protagonist told Shauna calmly that he agrees. He added to the girl to have a good rest. The main character became silent. He looked at the Shanyu girl cheerfully and with a smile. Shanna asked with surprise, "Since when has Lin Mo been so kind to her?" The protagonist activated his bond with his girlfriend. He realized he couldn't leave her with the students. The main character's girlfriend sensed that he was reaching out to her via telepathy. The protagonist used a spiritual connection to communicate with his girlfriend, Lian. Shanna took Lian by the hand and led her to her room with her. She said she would sleep with her tonight. Lian sat silently on the bed. Shanna asked in surprise, "Isn't she going to take off her clothes before going to bed?" Shanna then cheerfully asked her new acquaintance, "Is she shy?" Shayna piled on top of Lian and shouted cheerfully for her help. The main character's girlfriend silently grabbed the Shanna girl's hand with her own. Shanna asked with surprise at the girl, "Doesn't Ta want her to help her take off her clothes?" After that, Shanna asked quite cheerfully if Lian wanted to help her undress now. The protagonist was awake. He thought with interest to himself that girls have dirty games. Lin Mo looked at the Shanyu girl with his girlfriend's eyes. He thought to himself that he would submit to the Shani's demands. At this time, the girl Lian suddenly wanted to pile on top of Shani on the bed. The girl was very much startled and surprised. After that, Lian very quickly took off the outer clothes of the frightened Shani girl. Shanna was very shy and embarrassed. She didn't expect something like this. Shanna looked at her new acquaintance. In doing so, she felt as if a guy was looking at her. After calming down a bit, Shanna told the Lian girl that they should go to bed sooner already. Lian grabbed her girlfriend by the remnants of her clothes. The protagonist thought Shanna regretted what she had already said. After that, Lian completely silently decided to rip the rest of her clothes off of Shani. Shanna was a little embarrassed. She told her friend not to do it again. The protagonist telepathically commanded his girlfriend that it was time for bed, at which time Shanna shouted to the surprised girls that there was nothing to see and that they should go to bed. It was the middle of the night. It was quiet. All the people in the apartment were asleep. Shanna said aloud to the alien girl that the girl was enchanting. She could become even more beautiful if she smiled more. The protagonist was awake. He spoke to Shanna through a telepathic link on behalf of his girlfriend Lian. Lin Mo looked at the sleeping Shanna with his girlfriend's eyes. He thought that Shanna was responsible for feeding many people on her own. After that, the main character turned on his side and decided to fall asleep. The guy decided to make himself forget about it. The next day, the weather was clear. The protagonist, along with the students, prepared to leave. Lin Mo was standing near the entrance of the building with the students. He said that they should get some food before they set out. One of the guys handed the protagonist some water. He added that if there wasn't enough, Lin Mo could ask for more. The main character was excitedly discussing something with a Lu student. There were many other people around. Lu's boyfriend standing around the corner said angrily that the protagonist was taking their supplies without caring about them. The student with glasses asked Lu excitedly if he wanted to get beaten up again. The Lu guy looked at the main character and the other students for a long time. Then he yelled irritably that they were all freaks. The protagonist asked the surrounding students what kind of weapons do they have. Lu guy said the best weapon for them is a kitchen knife. Lin Mo said they would each get one knife. Weapons distribution began. Each of the students got one knife for themselves. The guy was looking at the students with a baleful look and thought that it wouldn't be that easy for them. After that, the protagonist shouted for everyone to hurry up, as they should arrive before noon. Shanna's girlfriend encountered a zombie in her path. She attacked him with her sword. Shanna finished the monster with a kick and shouted for the others to follow her. The Lu guy showed up. He fearlessly attacked the zombie, attacking him with his kitchen knife. The protagonist watched the battle with the monsters from the sidelines. He realized that the students worked very well together. Lin Mo thought to himself, if there were no burdensome people, the Shan girl and her friend would be better off in this chaos. The guy remembered that ever since Lian had eaten the last mutated zombie pill, she had lost interest in the normal zombie pills. The protagonist remembered his girlfriend. He decided that more mutated pills would be needed to evolve the girl. Lin Mo remembered to himself that the last 2 mutated zombies had appeared in enclosed spaces and where there were a couple of people. The main character took his girlfriend's hands. He decided that he needed to go and check out places like hospitals, schools, and stores. Lin Mo decided that he would go alone. When they reached the school, there might be a few mutated zombies there. At this time, one monster quietly crept up behind the student and held out his hand. Suddenly, Monster grabbed the student from behind by his clothes and pulled him toward him. The surrounding students were very surprised and scared because of the way their friend had disappeared. The protagonist realized that there was no time to lose. He accelerated and ran to the student's aid. Lin Mo jumped fearlessly onto the window and smashed it. The main character walked into the room and saw some zombie gnawing on a kidnapped student. The monster noticed the protagonist approaching him from behind. He turned around angrily. The guy was getting ready to attack the zombie. He swung his dagger. From a powerful blow from the protagonist, the monster shattered into pieces. At that time, a Shana girl ran into the room. She asked excitedly to the protagonist, "Where is the student?" The main character was sitting on the floor. After a brief pause, he told the students not to look at the guy. Lin Mo turned around and started to walk away. He told the students in a firm voice that their friend was dead. The main character stood silently with his girlfriend near the corner of the building. A group of students looked inside the store where the body of their friend lay. Shana's girlfriend was very sad. She was having a hard time getting over the loss of her acquaintance. The pigtailed girl excitedly and fearfully asked the Shana, "What should they do?" Shana remained silent. She realized that it was imperative to cheer up her friends now. After a brief pause, Shana menacingly shouted to her friends that they needed to move on. The protagonist watched the Shania girl closely from the sidelines. Linmo thought to himself, Shana girl is very decisive at critical moments. The protagonist grabbed his girlfriend's hand and told her confidently to follow him. There was a guy standing next to a group of students with his friend. He was really pissed off. The student with glasses told the Lu boy that they should follow the main character. In response, the Lu boy resisted. The student with glasses shouted excitedly that the others had already left. The Lu guy accused his friend of making them stay and someone had already died. The guy with glasses asked fearfully to his friend, how could they survive without the girls Shana and Liu Hao? The guy Lu angrily asked his friend what they can, even if they follow the others. He recalled that the protagonist hit him. After thinking a bit, the student with glasses said that the fewer people there were, the more advantages they would have. The guy with the glasses said that the Lu should make Shana happy since he's depending on her now. Afterward, the student with glasses said cheerfully that Lin Mo guy is untouchable. The Lu guy was very angry. He angrily called Wang Chen a traitor. The guy looked at his friend and shouted that he was a hypocrite. Lu thought to himself that if that hadn't happened, Shana's girl would already belong to him. The Lu guy decided to himself that the main character was not worthy. At this time, the students approached a building where there were many zombies around. The Shana girl looked at the huge crowd of zombies and said that it would be difficult. Shana shouted excitedly to her friends that they needed to distract those zombies. The students stopped in indecision. None of them wanted to go distract zombie. Shana shouted she would attract the attention of the monsters, and the protagonist could lead the students away. Suddenly, Lin Mo pulled out his dagger. He replied to the girl that he would be the one who could distract the zombies. The main character told the girl Shana to find a place to hide with her friends. Shana was surprised that Lin Mo decided to distract the monsters. Shana asked excitedly to the guy, does he really want to go? She said she could do it herself. At that time, someone in the students came over and put their hand on the protagonist's shoulder. Lu Boy got very excited and thanked the protagonist on behalf of all the students. Lin Mo thought quietly to himself that he simply did not want to stay and babysit the students. The protagonist thought that if Shana's girlfriend went to distract the zombies, it was very unlikely that she would return. The student with glasses told Shana that they needed to do what the main character said. Shana's girl raised her hand and told her friend confidently to go hide with her. The girl walked up to the main character and excitedly told him to be careful. Lin Mo put his hand up and said back to Shana about 5 minutes. Afterward, the guy explained to the girl that he was giving her and the students 5 minutes to find the safe place. The main character tuned out and cheerfully said it was time for them to start the zombie party. Lin Mo was standing near the entrance of the store. He told his girlfriend that they were going inside. The protagonist walked right up to the door. He saw a group of people standing behind them. After that, Lin Mo opened the door and saw a group of vicious monsters in front of him. The protagonist activated his magic skills against the monsters. Lin Mo launched his blue boa against the group of zombies to restrain them. The protagonist was able to use his magic boa to completely immobilize all the zombies around him. The guy realized that he needs to control his girlfriend all the time. For this reason, he can control no more than 3 more regular zombies. The protagonist decides that's enough for him. He walks over to the cell phone display. Then the guy pulled out all the phones and handed them to the zombies under his control. All the monsters ended up with a bunch of phones around their necks. The protagonist looked at the monsters happily and said it would turn out cool. Near the exit of the store, the protagonist looked at the monsters with satisfaction and asked, "Are they ready?" Lin Mo started the countdown. The monsters obediently walked around with their smartphones. The protagonist picked up one smartphone and turned up the volume on it. After that, the guy yelled to the zombies under his control that the report was coming to an end. The protagonist then commanded the zombies to run forward. There was a huge mob of dangerous zombies wandering around the store looking for prey, at which time the protagonist turned on a cheerful dance tune on his smartphone. The melody from the main character's cell phone sounded the same on the phones hanging on the zombies. The whole surrounding area was filled with a cheerful song about seaweed dancing on a wave. The song was coming from the zombies' smartphones. A mob of angry monsters ran after them. Shanna's girlfriend at this time with her friends were sitting in a room waiting for action from the protagonist. Suddenly, Shanna heard the loud words of a song from the street. She was very much surprised. The girl turned to the window. She decided that the main character would die recklessly. Shanna remembered the main character. Linmo said to the girl and the students to pass when the zombies start chasing him on the street. Shanna realized it was time to act and there was not a second to lose. She commanded the students to go forward. The students scurried down the steps. Shanna shouted to her friends to hurry up and move. After that, Shanna was distracted for a while. She couldn't believe that the protagonist and his girlfriend were now in the hospital. Shanna saw a huge crowd of zombies bursting toward the entrance of the hospital. The excited Lou boy hurried his girlfriend Shanna to go quickly. Shanna's girlfriend stood motionless. She was still looking at the crowd of zombies. Suddenly, Shanna saw the protagonist and his girlfriend Lian running from behind. Linmo shouted that it was all he could do, at which time someone threw the monster's body outside from the top floor of the hospital. Zombie's body fell from a great height to the ground. The other monsters were still busting through the front door. The body falling from a great height distracted some of the zombies. They turned around. The zombies noticed the main character standing very close by, along with his girlfriends. The main character shouted to his girlfriends to run. He held the hand of Lian and Shanu. A huge mob of zombies with a thunderous roar was rushing, chasing after the protagonist. The guy and his girlfriends were rushing down the street. The crowd of monsters behind them was getting bigger and bigger. Shanna's frightened girl asked the worried protagonist what to do now. The protagonist yelled to the girl to take cover. "You can't fight monsters in the open." The guy saw a huge high-rise building in front of him. He yelled out to go inside. Then the protagonist ran to the entrance and got inside the building. A huge mob of screaming monsters ran up to the front door and began to burst inside. The protagonist turned to his girlfriend and shouted to her excitedly, "Not now." Suddenly, one angry zombie broke in through the front door of the building. The main character shouted loudly to his friends to kill all the zombies one by one. The girl, Shanna, was using her sword to bravely chop the monsters around. The protagonist was killing zombies with his dagger. One of the female students stood very frightened while holding a kitchen knife in her hands. The other girl was holding a knife in her hands and couldn't bring herself to lunge at the monster. The Lu guy asked the people around him what they should do now. The student with glasses fearfully replied to his friend that he didn't know what they should do. Suddenly, loud footsteps of approaching monster girls were heard from behind. The student with the knife turned around frightened. She didn't expect someone to approach them from behind. Two young zombie girls came down the stairs. The incoming students were frightened. One student, trembling with fear, shouted to the monster girls to leave, at which time someone came up behind the guy and shoved his arm with all his might. Falling down, the surprised student noticed that he was shoved from behind by his familiar friend named Van Chang. The monster girls pounced on the lying student. He was screaming for someone to help him. The girl with pigtails, trembling with fear, held the knife in front of her. She shouted in a trembling voice to keep the zombie away from her. The zombie girl accelerated and lunged at the student to gnaw her. The main character's girlfriend appeared at that time. She snatched the knife from the frightened student's hand. Then the lion girl grabbed a knife and stabbed the monster woman with it. The rescued pigtailed student marveled at the bravery of the protagonist's girlfriend. Shanna turned excitedly to the alien girl. She marveled at how bravely she had rescued the student. The main character was watching from the sidelines. He was happy for his girlfriend, Elian. The protagonist, along with his friends, bravely confronted a group of monsters who broke into a building. Thanks to his special dagger, Linmo was able to slice through the dangerous zombies around him with a single blow. Suddenly something struck and shook the protagonist very hard. He felt his strength leaving him. The exhausted protagonist said he could no longer control the situation in that state. He felt almost at his limit. The protagonist shouted excitedly to his friends to step back a bit and slow down. Shanna's girl waved her sword and replied to the protagonist that they would. Suddenly, a threatening shout of zombie came from somewhere upstairs. Shanna and Lu's boyfriend became wary. After coming to his senses a little, the Lu boy asked in a frightened voice, "What should they do now?" The protagonist confidently stabbed another monster with his dagger. He shouted to his friends to take care of themselves first. Linmo commanded his girlfriend Elian telepathically to kill two zombies and not to overdo it. The alien girl with a knife in her hand accelerated and full of determination rushed against the monsters. Elian attacked the monsters with a professional movement, chopping them into pieces. The girl was professionally stabbing the zombies around her with a knife. After a long battle near the front door, all that was left was a pile of zombie corpses all around. The guy said in a worried voice that he thought he was going to die. The Shanna girl looked around and asked very frightened that two guys were missing. Lu guy reported that during the fight he saw two guys coming up the stairs. Shanna's girlfriend commanded Lu's boyfriend to get up and check what happened to the guys. The protagonist, sitting on the floor and not turning around, said there was no need to get up. In a completely calm voice, Linmo informed him that the boys must be dead. After a short pause, the main character added that zombies are on the first floor and should be on the second floor, so the guys at the top don't stand a chance. Shanna was frustratingly silent. Suddenly, from the top floor came a shrill and harsh human scream. The students below were very much frightened and disturbed by the scream they heard. The Shanna girl nervously held her sword. She chided herself for killing 4 people. The protagonist walked up to Shanna and put his hand on her shoulder. He told her reassuringly that it wasn't her fault. Linmo explained to the girl that things could have been worse if she had left the guys there. Shanna thanked the protagonist. The protagonist and his alien girlfriend headed for the exit of the building. Shanna's girlfriend looked at the departing protagonist and his girlfriend with great attention. Shanna thought that Leon is also a strong warrior, not to mention the main character. At that time, the students started fighting with each other. Someone blamed it on the guy with the glasses. The student grabbed the guy with glasses by his clothes and said it was the guy's fault they were all here. The guy frightenedly excused himself and demanded to be let go. One of the students angrily threw himself at the guy with the glasses with a knife and yelled that he was going to kill him. Suddenly there was a clang of metal. Someone managed to stop the knife attack against the student in time. The Shanna girl managed to swat away the knife with her sword just in time to hit the guy with glasses. The guy got angry, sped up and punched the student in the face with all his might. The protagonist turned around. He looked at everything that was going on without any emotion. The main character's attention was drawn to the guy with the glasses. He took a long, hard look at him. The student with glasses looked in the direction of the protagonist with a piercing and hateful gaze. Lugai angrily yelled to the student that guns are not for pointing at people. The student with glasses reconciled and said in a calm voice that he was completely fine. As calmly as possible, the guy with the glasses said his abuser was nervous. The Shanna girl stashed her sword in its scabbard and told her friends it was time to go. The protagonist returned and looked at the students carefully. He noticed that the conflict between them was over. A student with glasses approached the protagonist and asked in a friendly tone, "Why is he looking at him like that?" Linmo was silent. He stared blankly in front of him. The guy was pensive. Linmo turned around and told his companions that it was time to move. Near the underground entrance to the supermarket, there were dangerous zombies roaming around. Inside the supermarket in a storeroom near the wall sat the monster, chained up. Suddenly the monster perked up and perked up. It was as if something had made it come to life. Zombie's red eyes lit up and he screamed loudly and very angrily. The monster's formidable and prolonged scream echoed loudly and vastly throughout the market. The protagonist and his companions descended the steps to the supermarket Liha. The guy looked around carefully and fearfully. He said there didn't seem to be anyone around. Shanna's girlfriend told the main character to go inside and look for zombies. They'll cover for him in the meantime. Linmo agreed to this. Shanna told the 2 students to go along with her. The protagonist said they would meet at the entrance later. Linmo was walking through the store with the lion girl. Everything inside was broken and scattered. The guy thought to himself that his psyche had improved after the fight. The guy thought he had improved his visual acuity. He remembered everything down to the smallest detail. Linmo looked around. He had a bad feeling. A guy cautiously walked through the supermarket. He felt as if someone was following him. The protagonist noticed his girlfriend's eyes light up. Elian turned to the side. Linmo felt very clearly that his girlfriend was hungry for something. He became alert, Elian looking excitedly away. The protagonist thought his girlfriend might be attracted to a mutated zombie. The zombie's terrible scream echoed in the supermarket's pantry hallway. Linmo shouted to his girlfriend that something was happening and they needed to run forward. As the huge monster prepared to devour its next victim with a loud scream, the Lugai was really scared. He stood there looking at the monster. The guy lying down shouted with his last strength for his friend to help him. The zombie turned sideways with burning eyes. He noticed someone standing nearby. The Lu boy was very frightened and trembling with fear. He realized that he himself would not defeat the monster. A huge zombie with burning eyes rushed after the guy. At that time, the main character with a girl ran up. The student Lu screamed and asked for help. The protagonist realized to his surprise that there was a mutated zombie in front of him. The protagonist ran, and as he ran, he excitedly turned to his girlfriend Alion. The girl was going full speed ahead. She was ready to fight the zombies. The protagonist drew his dagger. He realized that there was a mutated zombie in front of him, and he had to do his best. The terrified guy was screaming for help. The zombie was holding his arm at the time. Suddenly, the monster became angry and hit the student with all his might, knocking him to the side. The guy Lu, after a very powerful blow from a zombie, fell to the ground. The protagonist was standing next to the monster while he looked around. Then the zombie hit the floor with all his might. causing the bricks to fly apart. Linmo very excitedly realized that this monster was very different from the previous one. The guy lying there yelled that he was in pain. He asked the main character to help him. The protagonist held the dagger at the ready. He realized that he had to kill the zombie before Shanna's girlfriend arrived. The protagonist activated his magical connection to the girl. He needed her help. The magical connection reached the alien. She received a message from the protagonist. The protagonist unequivocally commanded his girlfriend to go ahead. The alien girl's eyes lit up brightly. She fearlessly rushed against the mutated zombie. The monster stood there unaware as the alien girl crept up behind him. After that, the girl delivered a powerful blow to the mutated zombie's back with all her strength. The protagonist realized that without his control, the girl's killer instinct was completely unleashed. The protagonist ran up to the zombie with a dagger and bravely shouted that it was him. Linmo, after a strong swing, struck the mutated zombie with his dagger. The girl alien pierced the back of the monster with her hand. There was a loud crunch and a scream from the zombie. The protagonist looked excitedly at the huge mutant zombie standing in front of him, who was still alive. The protagonist realized he had to find the monster's weakness. The mutated zombie turned out to be very strong. Suddenly, some very important hunch came into the main character's head. The guy activated his magic skills against the zombies to capture and control them. Linmo felt that it was very difficult for him to control the two mutated zombies at the same time. The protagonist was having a hard time. He even got a nosebleed from overexertion. The exhausted guy shouted out of his last strength for development to begin. The magical lash that encompassed the zombie began to grow thicker and stronger. The huge monster ended up being completely restrained by a magical bluish lash. The protagonist excitedly shouted to his girlfriend to start acting now. The vines accelerated for another powerful strike at the zombies from behind. With a strong movement, the girl was able to rip the thing out of the mutated monster's head. She had gotten what she needed. She was holding the green zombie pill. Shanna's girlfriend and Liu's boyfriend came running over. Shanna ran up and asked very scared and excitedly, "What happened here?" The girl was very much stunned. Shanna looked at the defeated zombie and couldn't say anything. The girl looked and saw a huge zombie lying in front of her, which the protagonist and his girlfriend were able to destroy. The huge body of a zombie with green blood was lying on the floor. The main character and his girlfriend Eliane stood silently beside it. The main character closed his eyes. He was heavy and uncomfortable with the heavy odor of dead zombies. A surprised and worried Shanna asked the protagonist if everything is fine with him. Linmo replied that everything is fine with him, at which time the protagonist took with his hand the green pill that lay in his pocket. The weary Linmo thought his psyche had fully developed over the last fight. The protagonist looked at his girlfriend. He felt his bond with Eliane become much stronger. At that time, the guy was lying wounded. He shouted to his friends to help him. Shanna's girlfriend ordered her friend Liu to bandage their injured acquaintance. Liu excitedly ran up to the injured student. He shouted for him not to roar as he was on his way. Liu started to help his friend. At this time, the Liu guy thought excitedly that the protagonist was able to save him after all. Liu was very annoyed when his friend bandaged him. He felt a lot of pain, at which time the students approached their mortally wounded friend who was lying on the floor. The dying guy barely audible voice pleaded to the Shanna girl to help him. Shanna looked at her close comrade. She realized that he didn't stand a chance. Shanna raised her sword over the lying student. She solemnly told him to rest in peace. After that, the Shanna girl stabbed the mortally wounded guy on the floor with her sword. Shanna turned around and started walking away. She told her shocked friends that she had put the guy out of his misery. After that, Shanna walked up to the protagonist. She stood beside him for a long time and remained silent. Shanna asked, surprised at the guy, how was he able to handle his girlfriend with a mutated zombie in a short time? Linmo replied as calmly as possible that he was hurt too. Shanna's girlfriend immediately realized that the protagonist was hiding something from her. At that time, the Liu guy came over. He told the Shanna girl fearfully that he had something to say to her. Shanna turned to the main character and told him to approach as well. Guy Liu said sad that their friend Lu Xin won't be able to cope after being injured. Liu explained that the color of the wound is the same color as a zombie's. For that reason, it can't just be left alone. Shanna's girlfriend replied to her friend that he was probably right. Liu asked excitedly, what should they do now? Liu boy timidly suggested that they could take their injured friend with them. Shanna replied sharply that there was no way they would do that. Shanna excitedly explained that everyone was turning away from Lu Xinyi, explained that they couldn't take him. Liu once again asked fearfully, what should they do? The protagonist told the Shanna girl not to look at him. He added that he doesn't get involved in student affairs. Shanna told Liu to give some food to the injured Lu Xin and leave him here. If Liu survives and doesn't transform, they'll pick him up when they get back. The protagonist thought that the Shanna girl was offering troublesome expenses. He thought that their food for Lu Xin might be wasted. Lin Mo thought for a while and decided that leaving Lu Xin behind was still much better than taking him with him. The Shanna girl walked over to the injured Lu Xin guy sitting in the corner and crouched down beside him. Shanna's girlfriend explained to the guy that the room he was in was completely hidden, and the zombies wouldn't find him. Lu Xin looked at his friends unhappily. There was water and food beside him. Shan's girlfriend said they couldn't take any chances. She promised that they would check on him when they returned from school. The angry and annoyed Lu Xin shouted back to the girl that he agreed. Shanna turned to her friend Lu and said it was time to go. The guy agreed. The protagonist watched the girl carefully. It surprised him that Shanna was more upset about leaving her comrade behind than cutting short the life of a severely injured man. Lin Mo thought to himself that the girl had done the right thing. He looked at Lu Xin and decided that this guy would rather sacrifice the others for himself. The main character, looking at the student, thought that the people who were infected by the mutated zombies would become the same. The Lu Xin student was very angry. He glared angrily at the protagonist. The protagonist looked through the door at Lu Xin with a parting glance and went on his way. The protagonist and his friends arrived at school number 3. They stopped at the fence. Lin Mo stood surrounded by students. They looked at the school building silently and excitedly. After a long pause, the main character said that something was wrong, as it was very quiet around. Lu explained that many people had fled here after the virus spread. The protagonist thought that there are a lot of zombies in such closed places. They devour each other and appear mutated. The main character noticed his girlfriend getting very agitated. He realized that Elian sensed a couple of zombies. Shanna girl said confidently to the main character that they could go inside. Lin Mo yelled for the girl to stop. As calmly as possible, the protagonist told the girl that their paths were parting. Shanna was very surprised. Lin Mo told the Shane girl that they were now going their way and he his. Shanna's girlfriend fell silent. She pondered the words she had heard from the boy for a long time. Shanna's girlfriend squeezed out a smile and thanked the protagonist and his girlfriend. Guy Lu held out food and water to the head hero. Lin Mo thanked his friend and said he could keep the supplies. Afterwards, the main character told his friends that they might see each other again later. He still had schoolwork to do. The protagonist and his girlfriend went inside and moved around the school building. The main character noticed that the girl's eyes were reddened. There was probably a mutated zombie nearby. Then the protagonist and his companion walked to the elevators. Lin Mo looked closely and noticed that the elevator was still running. Suddenly, the alien girl with burning red eyes snapped and ran forward. The protagonist activated his telepathic link with the girl and yelled for her to stop. The main character thought that zombies might be lurking in such places. The girlfriend's reaction confirmed his fears. Lin Mo bent down and picked up a pebble from the floor. He asked his girlfriend to move away a little. The protagonist decided to open the elevator safely. He hit the control button with a rock. The guy got worried. He pulled out his daggers to confront the zombies. The elevator was really working. The car started moving. The indicator showed that the elevator was on the 3rd floor. The scoreboard lit up and it appeared that the elevator had descended to the 2nd floor. There was a signal on the indicator that the elevator had already descended to the 1st floor. The main character heard a loud and menacing zombie scream. He yelled to the girl to stay put. The doors to the elevator car began to slowly open. Lin Mo prepared to repel the attack. A monster's pale hand peeked out from the door in the elevator. Lin Mo realized that he would have to fight a zombie. The main character said he thought so. An angry zombie with burning eyes ran out of the elevator. The protagonist crossed his weapons and prepared to fend off the monster's attack. Lin Mo jumped on top to immediately finish the monster with quick dagger strikes. The surprised protagonist noticed that zombie had grabbed his knives with his hands. Lin Mo was surprised and frightened. He realized that in front of him was a tough monster that didn't even get cut by the daggers. After calming down a bit, the protagonist shouted to his girlfriend to help him. Evines came up behind the dangerous zombie to attack him stealthily. Suddenly, the girl noticed that zombie had disappeared. He managed to move backwards very quickly. Min Lo accelerated and ran against the zombie, flying at him with his dagger. The protagonist stabbed the monster with his knife with a swing. The dagger did not bring the zombie any mushroom. The protagonist's knife flew away from the zombie like a stone wall. The main character was scared. He realized he had lost his weapon. At this time, zombie reached out to the guy. At this time, a bright blue glow appeared. A magical lash stretched towards the zombie. The monster stopped. He didn't expect to be tried with a magical lash attack. The main character excitedly called his girlfriend to help him. She came up behind the zombie and stabbed him with her knife with all her might. After a powerful blow from the alien girl, the zombie lost his arm. The wounded monster without an arm started to fall over. The zombie decided to continue attacking the protagonist with the girl. Zombie's strength returned. Even though he was without an arm, he shouted menacingly. The agitated protagonist realized that high-level zombies are harder to control. Lin Mo decided that Monster, after losing his arm, was no longer a threat. The protagonist confidently commanded his girlfriend to bravely go forward against the zombies with him. After a powerful attack from the protagonist and his girlfriend, the monster was thrown far into the wall. Ilian swung her arm overhead to chop the monster from the head. The girl swung the mutated zombie over the top. The monster screamed loudly after that. Lin Mo wanted to stab the monster with his knife. The zombie managed to grab the dagger with his teeth. The protagonist yells to his girlfriend that they need to finish off a zombie. The two of them rush against the monster. The mutated zombie was wrapped in a blue magical harness. It restrained his movements. The protagonist realized he couldn't do it on his own. He shouted to his girlfriend to help him. A magical restraint completely around Zombie's neck. He couldn't break free. The Lian girl was on top of the ceiling at the time. She prepared to jump on the zombie from above. Ilian jumped on top of the monster and knocked the zombie to the stone floor with all her might. The tired protagonist sat on the floor. He said in a weary voice that they had finally finished off the zombies. At this time, the girl dug into the head of the slain mutated zombie and pulled out a green pill from there. Ilian then handed the protagonist the pill she had taken out of the monster. Lin Mo looked at the pill carefully. He realized that it wasn't like the one they had gotten before. The guy looked at the green crystal and decided it looked a lot better than the past ones. Ilian opened her mouth to take the pill. The main character told her girlfriend that it was very dangerous here. After that, the protagonist took a green pill and put it into a special bag. The protagonist told excitedly to his girlfriend that they should go as there might be other mutated ones around. A guy and his girlfriend meet another zombie and the two of them chop him up. Lin Mo used a magical lash to disarm the zombie woman. Ilian's girlfriend finished her off. The protagonist and his girlfriend fend off zombie attacks from all sides. After destroying the monsters, the girl would walk between their corpses and look for the green pills. After a hard battle against the monsters, the protagonist stood against the wall and rested. Ilian approached him with a green pill. Lin Mo looked at the pill and realized that judging from its color, it would be the weakest. The guy calculated that he had 7 pills so far, not counting the one he'd just gotten. He put them all in a bag. The main character was looking at the pills. He said to himself that almost all of them were of good quality. Lin-O looked at his girlfriend. He figured those pills might make her mutate again. The protagonist realized that now that he had control over his girlfriend, he felt as if she had become a part of him. Lin-Mo felt that with his level of mental development, he would be able to control 2 mutated people at the same time. For him, the only flaw would be his weak body. The guy looked at his girlfriend, who was sitting next to him. He told her that she wasn't even sweating after the battles. The protagonist threw the pill in his pocket. He said that if his body had more stamina, he wouldn't be sitting here right now. Lin-Mo held out his hand to his girlfriend. He said that he was very tired and that she should help him get up. At this time, a golden bandage with a piece of jewelry suddenly fell off the girl's neck. The protagonist was a little discouraged. He looked down at the fallen bandage. Then Lin-Mo looked up and looked at the Ilian girl. He was silent. The guy felt very self-conscious when he saw the girl's huge breasts in front of him. The girl was silent. She looked at her friend with a completely innocent and calm gaze. He felt very embarrassed and embarrassed. He had to cope with his feelings. The protagonist lifted the blindfold. He commanded himself that he must remain calm. Lin-Mo put the blindfold around his girlfriend's neck. He thought that now was not a good time to do so. Lin-Mo helped tie the bandage around the girl's neck. He looked and thought to himself that everything was ready. The protagonist looked from a distance at his girlfriend. He was happy and content to have Ilian by his side. The protagonist cheerfully commanded his girlfriend that the two of them should go ahead. Suddenly, the Ilian girl's eyes turned red. It meant that there might be zombies nearby. Lin-Mo wondered because of around there might be zombies. He thought they had killed them all here before. The protagonist anxiously looked out the window. He thought that zombie might have come from another building. Lin-Mo remembered the girl Shanna. He thought that she couldn't fight off ordinary zombies. The main character told his girlfriend that they need to go and clear the other floors. They need to try harder to get more crystals. At which time, a young zombie approached the fence that surrounded the large houses. The young zombie was able to jump the fence and move on without any difficulty. The zombie was a Lu Blue guy who had been left behind by students he knew earlier. Lu Xin's zombie's arm was affected. It was like it was decomposing on his body. The young zombie was walking around and laughing to himself with an evil laugh. Zombie Lu Xin thought aloud of his acquaintances Ling Mo, the girl Shanna, and the others. The young zombie's red eye glowed. He shouted to his former acquaintances that they would pay for everything. Shanna girl, accompanied by students, walked slowly and cautiously down the school corridor. Shanna told her companions that they were getting close and to be on the lookout. Liu asked Shanna, Does she really think their friends are still alive? The student with glasses said that their friends were probably dead because they had no water or food. Shanna grudgingly said that she was prepared for such an outcome. She added that they should keep their promise. The girl pulled out her sword. A little worried, she told her friends that they should go in and check it out. Shanna, along with her companions, approached the large door. There were traces of blood all around. The girl stood by the door for a long time. She gathered her thoughts and prepared to enter. Calming down a bit, Shanna confidently tapped her hand on the door where their friends were supposed to be. From behind the door, a frightened voice asked who had come to see them. Shanna was very happy that there were living people. Shanna told the people in the room that they had come for them. Her companions were overjoyed. The door opened and a startled teacher with glasses looked out of there. He called the girl by name. Luboy asked the Wang teacher, very frightened, what happened to him. Suddenly the girl Shanna became very worried and scared. She saw something nightmare. Shanna said there were more than 20 people inside when they left. She asked, "Where did the others go?" Teacher Wang replied fearfully that there had been an accident. Shanna's girlfriend menacingly wanted to break into the room. She shouted at the teacher to back off. After that, Shanna ran into the room. She was very shocked and scared. The girl noticed the piles of remains of human bodies and bones lying on the floor. There were pieces of human flesh chewed off all over the room. As she looked closer, she noticed some survivors. They were clearly in an inadequate state. The surviving students sat laughing an evil laugh surrounded by the remains of human bodies. Guy Lu, very scared and excited, asked the Shanna girl what happened. After that, the guy came in and looked in the room by himself. He was very shocked. He even dropped the knife he was holding in his hands out of fright and shock. Liu's boyfriend felt nauseous. He yelled he was disgusted. The excited teacher Wang shouted that he was very glad that Shanna girl was here now. They wouldn't have to live like this anymore. Shanna grabbed her sword. Teacher Wang asked the girl if she had any normal food, since they hadn't had normal food in a very long time. Shanna girl was very much upset and angry at the words from the teacher, and then the girl kicked Teacher Wang with all her might. With a powerful blow, Master Wang flew to the side and broke the table. Teacher Wang jumped up and asked angrily at the girl, what on earth was she doing? The Shanna girl recalled the words of the protagonist and said that he turned out to be completely right. Shanna quoted the main character saying that their friends are parasites. The girl told the people in the room that they could provide for themselves. Instead of looking for food, they ate their comrades alive. She told the people in the room that they were far more dangerous than the zombies. In parting, the girl told her former friends that they were on their own now. Teacher Wang was surprised. He couldn't understand how the Shanna girl could leave them all to themselves. The students in the room were outraged. They had waited so long for the girl to come, and now Shanna wanted to leave them to themselves. The students got angry. They went at the girl as a group and shouted that she should be killed. The furious and angry crowd of students together ran against the Shanna girl in a friendly manner. Shanna realized that now she would have to fight against her former friends. She was ready. Very quickly, the girl was able to use her sword to chop off the head of one of the students. Shanna used her sword to mercilessly destroy her former high school friends. The protagonist and his girlfriend approached the open door to the school classroom. The protagonist stared for a long time in front of him. For him, what he saw seemed strange. Lin Mo said that there must have been mutated people in the classroom. There were student bodies lying around. The protagonist looked at his girlfriend. She was completely calm. Lin Mo decided that the mutated zombies were not here. Then the protagonist looked out the window. It was broken and there was blood on the windowsill. After looking around and thinking, the protagonist decided that some monster had jumped out the window. Lin Mo told his girlfriend that they needed to go and check out the other holes. A guy and a girl were walking down long school corridors. There were bloodstains everywhere. That's when someone's very loud cry for help echoed down the school corridor. At the same moment, the Shanna girl chopped another student who attacked her with her sword. The school children were very surprised and frightened when they saw their friend being hacked to death by a Shanna girl. Shanna was very angry. She looked at the students next to her with a hateful look. The students, along with Teacher Wang, were very much frightened because of the girl's behavior. The students decided to flee. They ran frightened down the stairs toward the exit. The Shanna girl continued to chase the students. She decided to kill one of them by jumping on top of them. With a quick and deft movement, the girl chopped her former classmates with her sword. Shanna ruthlessly attacked the students, chopping them down with her sword the way she had done with the zombies before. The terrified student watched as the Shanna girl approached him with a sword. The student frightenedly plopped down on the floor and crawled to the wall. He yelled to the girl not to kill him. The boy begged. He begged fearfully to the Shanna girl to let him go. The student was banging his head on the floor. He told the girl that he would do anything for her. The Shanna girl said sternly to the guy that he had to listen to the same thing from others. The guy was still banging his head on the floor. Shanna recalled that the guy's friends had told him the same thing before he killed them. The student smiled wildly at the girl and told her cheerfully that he could absolutely explain everything. Shanna didn't listen to the student. She swung around and blew his head off with a powerful blow. The girl holding the sword told the student he had no right to do so. At this time, the girl's friends came running up and they were very scared and excited. The friends were very frightened. They were shocked when they saw the bodies around them. The boys saw their girlfriend Shanna standing beside them with a bloody sword. Shanna's girlfriend stood unfazed, surrounded by the bodies of the students she had killed. A little daring, the guy came up to his girlfriend and asked excitedly if she was okay. The girl was silent. The guy yelled to his girlfriend that she was scaring him. That's when the scream of the mutated zombie came out. A female monster attacked the student. A mutated zombie killed an unsuspecting young student. The guy got really scared. He yelled that there was a mutated monster in front of them. The zombie woman accelerated and lunged at the students. The guys started to scatter. After that, the female zombie decided to attack Shania. The girl stood there as if she didn't notice anything. The Lou boy shouted excitedly to the Shane girl for Ta to be more careful. The student with glasses realized fearfully that he definitely couldn't survive without the Shani girl, at which time a guy with glasses decided to shove another student off for a female zombie. A very scared student started screaming for someone to help him. Zombie was coming up behind him. A mutated zombie with red eyes grabbed the guy and prepared to gnaw him. The zombie clamped a death grip with her teeth into the neck of her defenseless victim. The girl Shanna stood staring in front of her. She didn't react in any way to what was happening. After that, Shanna began to come to her senses. She prepared to attack the zombie woman. Shanna approached the zombie with her sword from behind and prepared to attack. After that, the Shanna girl forcefully stabbed the mutated zombie with her sword. The body of a young boy was lying on the floor. Other students began to gather around him. The student with glasses said in a trembling and excited voice that it was over. Guy with glasses walked up to a Shanna girl and wanted to excitedly say something to her. Shanna's girlfriend didn't turn around and told the guy not to say anything else. It was time to move out. Zombie Lu Shin was watching the students from upstairs through the broken glass. He was looking for the protagonist. The young zombie said cheerfully to himself that he would kill the students first. Eventually, Zombie Lu decided to waste no time and start attacking. He shoved off and flew down. Shanna's girl turned around. She sensed a dangerous attack against her from above. At this time, an angry young zombie Lu Shin flew from above on top of the girl. The Shanna girl turned around and was slightly startled by the flying zombie. The zombie Lu Shin kicked the girl's legs with all his might with a burst of speed so that she flew off. The students watched in consternation as Shanna's girlfriend flew aside from the heavy blow. The girl was recovering from the blow. Ono called out the name Zombie Lucinia. Zombie said happily that they finally met again. Then the young zombie walked up to the girl and put his feet on her head. After that, Zombie Lu Shin grabbed the Shanya girl with his hand and lifted her up by her clothes. An agitated Lu guy with a knife in his hand came running up from behind. He yelled at the young zombie to let the girl go. Liu sped up and lunged with his knife to attack against Zombie Lu Shin. The young zombie Lu Shin turned around and kicked the Lu guy with all his might. The young zombie decided to send a message to the protagonist through the Lu guy. The young zombie decided to send a message to the protagonist through Liu's boyfriend. Lu Shin said that the protagonist must go to the men's dormitory or the Shan girl won't live long. After that, Lu Shin turned around and started walking away with the girl on his shoulder. Lu yelled to Zombie to let go of Shanu. The Lu guy shouted to the departing young zombie Lu Blue that he was a bastard. A guy with glasses came running up. He said excitedly that if Lu kept shouting, the whole neighborhood would be here soon. At that time, there were screams of monsters. A whole group of zombies ran towards the students. The guy asked irritably, what should they do since the monsters were already here? Guy Lu said they need to get out of here and find the main character soon. There was a great rumbling in the corridors of the school. It was a huge crowd of angry zombies running. Student Liu and his friend managed to take shelter in a small room. The guy shut the front door in time. The zombies were banging on the door loud and hard, after which the Liu guy took the heavy table and pushed it in, setting it near the door. Students barricaded themselves inside the room with tables, dropping them near the door. Guy Lu said reassuringly to his friend that they were safe for now. Student with glasses excitedly asked the Guy Lu, what should they do now? Lu replied loudly to his friend that they had no choice and needed to find the main character. The student with glasses was frightened. He realized that it would be impossible for him and his friend to get out of the office, at which time one of the zombies broke a window and slid into a classroom where there were 2 students. A group of monsters were running towards the 2 boys. Lu and his friend were standing near the blackboard. Lu Guy realized it was time to defend himself. He decided to grab the table. The student with glasses asked fearfully, what should they do now? Lu held the table over his head. He shouted that on his signal they should scram. Liu asked in a weary and agitated voice, "Where is the protagonist now?" A mob of vicious zombies were pacing the classroom. The students needed to save themselves. Liu's boyfriend yelled loudly to his friend that they needed to run now, and then Liu threw a huge table right at one of the zombies. The students ran to the doors. They needed to clear all the tables as soon as possible to get out. After that, the guys started throwing tables at the monsters that approached them. Eventually, Liu's boyfriend was able to get to the door. He shouted joyfully to his friend that they had made it. The guy opened the door and prepared to run away. He was surprised to see more zombies in front of him. Right in front of him stood a huge zombie, from which the guy would not be able to escape. The monster practically clawed at the student. The guy thought he was scared. He was done for. At that time, there was the whistling of cold weapons. Someone was using knives to deal with the zombies. He opened his eyes and saw that the monsters were being chopped up by someone. Liu noticed the main character standing on the body of some monster and tossing his dagger in his hands. Liu's boyfriend was very excited and overjoyed after such an unexpected rescue. The main character calmly asked the guy, "Where did Shauna's girlfriend go?" The main character stood with his girlfriend next to him and listened to the guy tell the story of everything that happened. There were zombie corpses lying around. The main character excitedly interjected, "Did zombie Lu Xin really grab the girl Shauna?" Guy Lu shouted excitedly to the main character that Lu Xin would kill the girl if he didn't come. Lu reported that Lu Xin is a mutated zombie, so only the protagonist will be able to deal with him. Lin Mo thought his assumptions were correct. Lu Xin has become a mutated monster, yet Zombie remains smart enough to kidnap Shanu's girlfriend. The protagonist looked at his girlfriend. She had regained a piece of consciousness along with evolution. The protagonist Formidable asked Lu where's young Zombie now with the girl. The already overjoyed Lu said that the girl together with her kidnapper would be in the men's dormitory. He added that he was waiting for the protagonist and his girlfriend. Liu got ready to go. He said he had to walk faster while Shauna was still safe. The main character yelled to the guy with the glasses to keep up. The student said cheerfully that he was coming. The main character and his companions were walking down an alley. Suddenly, something in the distance caught their attention. There was a group of young zombies sitting on the ground on the walkway. They were sitting next to each other. Young zombies were finishing the body of their next victim, a young student. The formidable monster was eating the young lad's body with great appetite. The zombie swallowed chunks of body parts from the young student lying in front of him. Zombie's eyes turned red. It meant he was mutating. The zombie with burning red eyes roared menacingly, and his scream echoed around the neighborhood. The guy with the glasses fearfully told the protagonist that they'd better take a detour. The main character realized that zombies can mutate after eating other zombies. As a result, there will be many more mutated ones. At this time, one of the young mutated monsters turned around and noticed the humans approaching. A group of young zombies dispersed and rushed screaming towards the people. The main character realized they'd have to fight. He threw to his girlfriend. To help him, the student with glasses squatted down fearfully. He repeated to himself that he should have taken a detour, after which the protagonist threw his dagger at the head of one zombie. The protagonist chopped one monster's head off with his dagger and ran off to fight another. Lin Mo attacked the next young zombie with his knife with a swing. The Lu guy happily shouted that the main character girl Shauna would be fine. A student with glasses excitedly shouted that the mutated zombie had disappeared somewhere. The protagonist looked around carefully. The mutated zombie was nowhere to be found. Lin Mo stood and listened carefully. There was no sign of the young monster anywhere. Then the zombie jumped in flight at the protagonist from a tree above. From the side, one of the guys yelled for Lin Mo to look up. At that time, a girl Evines appeared and attacked the young zombie. The girl Ilian nailed the zombie's head into a tree with a very powerful punch. The main character didn't even have to intervene. Guy Lu happily thought to himself that with the protagonist, his girlfriend zombie Lu Xin will definitely pay for everything. The protagonist turned to his companions and said confidently to go. Lin Mo and his companions approached the dormitory building. The structure was all smashed up. The Lu guy told the others they were in place after they entered the building. The protagonist noticed footprints on the floor. When he looked closely, he noticed that it was fresh blood. Lu shouted excitedly that it was a trace of Lu Xin blood. The young zombie was covered in blood. The main character said it's not the blood trail of the Shani girl. They can find the kidnapper and the girl if they follow the blood trail. The main character and his companions were walking up the stairs. Lu shouted to a guy with glasses named Wang Chung to be quicker. Wang replied that he was already on the edge of his seat. The protagonist looked under his feet. The bloody footprints were getting bigger and bigger. Lin Mo said that they were already in place. The protagonist went out into the hallway. There were bloody footprints all over the floor. The voice of a young zombie Lu Xin could be heard coming from the corridor. He shouted to the people who had arrived that he was already waiting for them. The main character scrutinized the zombie that the Lu Xun guy had turned into. The young zombie asked with a chuckle at the protagonist, "Was the young man scared?" Lu Xun told the protagonist angrily that it was his fault that he had become like this. The zombie Lu Xun angrily shouted to the protagonist that it was his fault that he had become like this. At that time, a Lu guy came from outside. He asked the excited protagonist, "Where is Lu Xun now?" The young zombie was very excited to see the Lu guy. He shouted happily that everyone was already here. The Lu boy looked angrily at his former friend. He asked the Lunar Blue what had happened to him. The young zombie shouted angrily that if it wasn't for the Lu guy, he would be absolutely fine right now. Young zombie pointed at the protagonist and said that if they didn't let Lin Mo in and just went back to school, he wouldn't be like this. The protagonist thought that usually people turn into zombies after being infected. But the case of Lu Blue is different. From a pure virus from a mutated zombie, Lu Blue's body can't take it and starts to rot. The zombie yelled that it was all because of the protagonist. Lin Mo could have helped him, but didn't. The protagonist menacingly asked Lu Xun, "Why does he think everyone is obligated to take care of him?" Lin Mo shouted irritably that enough talking. He asked Lu Xun where Shanna's girlfriend was now. Young zombie didn't like that question from the main character at all. Lu Xun shouted that the protagonist left him to die, but now he has a chance for revenge. He once again asked again, "Does Lin Mo really want to know where Shanna is?" Young zombie said excitedly that he would tell where the girl was if the protagonist cut off the hand he hit him with. The alien girl looked at the young zombie with a very formidable and hateful gaze. The main character calmly said that young zombie was simply an idiot. His girlfriend alien was behind him. Suddenly there was a loud voice from the Lu guy. He shouted to Lu Xun that he could take his hand. Liu prepared with his knife to cut off his hand. He shouted that the protagonist had saved them before. The guy swung his knife around to cut his arm off, at which time the protagonist came up and grabbed the Lu guy's hand with his knife. The main character told Lu guy calmly to back off and he'll deal with Lu Blue himself. Lin Mo told the student to calm down. The young zombie is no threat to him. The protagonist sped up and ran with his knife to attack Lu Xun. Lin Mo swung his dagger to cut off the young zombie's head very quickly. Lu Xun was very much surprised and frightened. He turned around and saw the main character behind him. Lin Mo shouted at the young zombie to go to hell. He prepared to stab him with his dagger. The protagonist successfully struck a powerful blow to Lu Xun's neck. Green blood splattered all around. The young zombie began coughing violently after being badly wounded by the main character. The young zombie clutched at his wound with his hand. He couldn't understand why Ling Mo was so strong. The protagonist told the young zombie that he had ducked in time. The virus boosted his agility nicely. The protagonist held the dagger in his hands. He asked the young zombie with interest, how long would it last? At this time, Lu Xun noticed the guy instantly disappeared somewhere, as if he had vanished into thin air. Young zombie was very surprised. He couldn't understand where the main character had gone. At this time, Lin Mo very quickly ran up from the side towards the surprised zombie. The Lu guy shouted very surprised that the main character was able to move so quickly. Lu Xun shouted to the pissed-off head hero to damn him. The young zombie menacingly yelled for Ling Mo not to look down at him. The main character cut off Lu Xun's arm with a very fast and strong blow. Lin Mo turned around and asked the young zombie, "Where's the Shan girl?" After calming down a bit, Lu Xun told the protagonist that he could go if he was really sure. Lu Xun said angrily to the protagonist not to be arrogant, although he is strong. He added that the only way to get to the girl was through his corpse. The main character listened silently, and without any emotion to everything the young zombie told him. Lu Xun walked around telling his former friends that they had left him to rot. Young zombie told all his former acquaintances to experience despair and pain. After saying that, Lu Xun broke out into a loud, thunderous, and demonic laughter. The protagonist swung his dagger and cut off the head of a young zombie. The students standing nearby stared in horror at the severed head of their former acquaintance. The protagonist turned to his companions and shouted excitedly to them that they should find the girl Shanu as soon as possible. Shanna's girlfriend was in a dirty and dark basement at the time. Shanna was sitting unconscious on the floor with her hands bound and gagged. The protagonist was able to find the right room without a problem and kicked in the door. Ling Mo saw the girl at once and ran up to her. He asked Shanna if she was hurt. The guy took the gag out of the girl's mouth so she could answer him. Lu shouted to the girl that everything was fine and not to worry. He wanted to untie her. Suddenly, Shanna told her friend in a very tragic voice that she didn't need to be untied. Liu's boyfriend asked the girl in an agitated voice, why no need to untie her? The protagonist thought to himself excitedly that Lu Xun could not do that to the girl Shanya. The Shanna girl gathered her courage and in a worried voice wanted to explain what had happened to her. There was a huge wound on the girl's arm. The wound was from a Lu Blue bite. The Shanna girl grasped her mortal wound on her arm with the palm of her hand. Shanna looked pitifully at her friends and told them she was infected. Liu's boyfriend was very much taken aback. He said in a trembling voice that there was no way Shanna could be infected. Suddenly Liu turned back to his friends and said that maybe the girl was playing a joke on them. The protagonist said calmly for the student to stop talking nonsense. Liu screamed hysterically that there was no way that Shan's girlfriend was infected. Everyone in the room was silent except for Liu. The boy shouted that it might be some kind of mistake. Liu Min slapped the student with a slap and yelled for him to calm down. Liu's boyfriend dropped his knife after the blow from the protagonist, which fell to the floor. The knife stabbed into the floor next to the Shanna girl. The protagonist said that it was still possible to help the girl. Ling Mo thought that Lu Xin's concentration of the virus was small. For this reason, the Shanyu girl could still be saved. The protagonist realized that Shania could only be saved if she was like his girlfriend Elian. The protagonist commanded his girlfriend Elian that they needed to get Shanna to the safe place. Elian prepared to fulfill the main character's errand and extended her hand to the girl. Shanna told her friends that they had better go on without her. Shanna had tears in her eyes. She said sadly to those around her that it was very late. Suddenly the girl reached out her hand to the knife sticking out of the floor beside her. Guy Lu excitedly and fearfully called out to girl Shanyu. Ling Mo was silent at this time. Shanna told her friends that she would rather die than become a zombie. She added that if they stayed here, she could hurt them. The girl prepared to stab herself with the dagger. Closing her eyes, Shanna determinedly prepared to slit her own throat with the knife. The protagonist sent a message via telepathic communication for his girlfriend. Elian's girlfriend, at the request of the protagonist, arrived just in time. She grabbed the knife near Shanna's throat with her hand. Shanna girl was very surprised because of Elian saving her at such a moment. The main character's girlfriend took the knife from Shanna and tossed it aside. The knife that flew aside went into the wall right next to the guy with glasses. The student got scared. Shanna's girl shouted disgruntled and annoyed at Elian and asked why the girl had stopped her. Shanna, sitting on the floor, told the main character sadly that she could infect them all. After that, the girl Shanna felt herself getting sick. She screamed. Shanna dropped to her knees and asked in a trembling voice for her friends to leave her alone. Guy came up to the girl and asked frightened, "What happened to her?" The protagonist formidably and loudly shouted to the guy to stay away from the Shane girl. Lu noticed the unusual reddish lightning bolts in his girlfriend's eyes. Shanna shouted menacingly at the Ilu boy to get away from her. She threw him aside. The protagonist was surprised. He noticed that the girl Shani got a lot of power during the transformation process. The main character was agitated. He sensed that something was wrong. It had only been 20 minutes and it was still too early. The Shanna girl in a weak voice told her friends to leave as she was losing control of herself. After that, the Shanna girl let out some kind of incomprehensible scream. Her strength was leaving her. A completely exhausted Shanna slumped unconscious on the floor with her eyes closed. The Lu guy asked the protagonist, very scared, "What are they going to do now?" Liu asked Ling Mo in an agitated voice, "Will Shan's girlfriend after the transformation be exactly the same as the zombie Lu Yin killed?" The protagonist shouted that he didn't think so. At this time, the girl's arm began to twitch little by little. Shanna regained consciousness little by little. Liu's boyfriend shouted joyfully that his girlfriend was still alive. Lin Mo shouted to the student to stop. At this time, Shanna had fully regained consciousness. She was already able to sit up. Her body was trembling. Suddenly, Shanna jumped to her feet. Reddish lightning flickered around her. Shanna looked down at the floor in front of her. She said in a menacing voice to the protagonist to give her something. The main character was very surprised because Shanna's girlfriend was still conscious. At that time, Shanna came completely close to Lin Mo. The protagonist was surprised at her behavior. At this time, Shanna opened her mouth and once again asked the protagonist to give her something. At this time, Shanna's eyes flashed red and she demanded in a more determined voice that Ling Mo give her something. The protagonist was silent and looked at the Shani girl's behavior with amazement. At that time, his girlfriend came running to the protagonist's rescue. She grabbed Shania from behind with her hand. After that, the Elian girl threw the Shanu to the floor with a burst of speed and continued to hold it with her hands. The protagonist told his girlfriend not to hurt Shanna. At this time, Shanna was still asking the protagonist for something. Shanna reached out to the protagonist with burning eyes and demanded that he give it to her. The protagonist guessed what the Shanna girl needed. He reached into his jacket pocket with his hand. Lin Mo showed Shanna the green pills in the bag and asked if she was talking about them. A very highly aroused Shanna screamed at the main character to give her the green pills. The protagonist thought excitedly to himself, "Can instincts tell a girl how to resist transformation?" Shanna screamed very loudly that her head might explode now. The protagonist realized they were running out of time and had to hurry. Lin Mo shouted to the guys to leave the room as the girl Shanna could still be saved. He added that they didn't have much time. The student with glasses shouted excitedly to the Elu guy that they should listen to the main character and leave. After that, the door closed and both the guys quickly disappeared. The protagonist got ready to approach Shanna. Linmo opened the bag and took out a green pill. He decided to himself that it should help. After that, the protagonist took a green pill and brought it to the mouth of the Shanna girl. Shanna swallowed the pill. It began to take effect immediately inside her body. The protagonist watched the reaction of Shani's girlfriend carefully. He thought excitedly to himself, "Is the pill working?" Linmo was then suddenly very surprised by the girl's behavior. After that, the Shanna girl walked up to the surprised protagonist and grabbed him by his clothes. Shanna begged the protagonist in a pleading voice to give her another pill. Linmo was surprised because of the fact that Shanna wanted more of the pill. He thought to himself that the crystals contained pure virus. He wondered how the girl's body was still holding up. The protagonist looked at his girlfriend. Alien looked very excited. Linmo, looking at Shanna, I wondered if she could evolve. The girl screamed that she had a headache and demanded more pills. The protagonist watched the girl's reaction carefully. Shani's body was trembling and sweat was running down her body. Linmo watched with excitement as a shiver ran through the girl's body from head to fingertips. The protagonist took another pill. He thought strongly to himself that there was no turning back. The guy brought the pill to the girl who was standing in front of him with her mouth open. Linmo thought to himself that at least this would work. Shanna's girlfriend swallowed the pill. She should have felt better after that. Shanna closed her eyes. She calmed down and her body no longer trembled. The girl felt better. Shanna opened her eyes. At that time, the alien girl came up to her and picked her up with her hand. The protagonist commanded his girlfriend to put the Shanna down. Now it's up to the Shanna herself. A guy with glasses ran into the room. He shouted to the main character that a bunch of zombies were heading their way. Linmo was very surprised. The protagonist realized that the zombies might have been attracted by the Shani girl's screams. After that, the guy commanded his companions that they would leave now. He added that his girlfriend should take care of Shanna. That's when the Lu guy yelled out of the blue that he needed to take something with him. The protagonist and his friends went outside and saw one zombie finishing his victim. The protagonist stabbed the zombie next to him with a knife. The Lian girl was carrying Shanya in her arms. The protagonist commanded his companions to go faster. Linmo remarked to himself in surprise that the student with glasses couldn't keep up with them, even with his life threatened. At that time, the Lu boy came running up. He shouted joyfully that he had taken away the sword that belonged to the girl Shane. The protagonist asked, surprised at the Lu guy, did he really run after the sword? Lu guy said that Shanna treasures her weapon very much and will not leave it behind. Linmo said cheerfully that Lu had tried very hard for the girlfriend. Liu's boyfriend replied that he didn't do all this for the love of the girlfriend. Liu said cheerfully that if it wasn't for Shanna, he would have been a zombie long ago. The main character told the guy that this was no time for chit-chat and to leave. The protagonist then found a suitable building in the city where they could take shelter. The protagonist ordered his girlfriend to leave Shania in the bedroom. He told the guys to guard the door. The Lu guy asked excitedly to the protagonist, will Shan's girlfriend be okay? That Shanna had been sleeping on the lap of the protagonist's excited girlfriend for a very long time. Suddenly Shanna opened her red eyes. She woke up and came to her senses fully. The main character was surprised and frightened. He realized that now Shanna had become very dangerous. Shanna's girlfriend jumped up and struck the main character's girlfriend with a powerful punch. Shanna stood to her full height. She had a lot of strength and energy. Reddish lightning bolts were coming out of her eyes. The main character quietly shouted to his friends to hurry up and leave. Linmo didn't turn around and told the guys to guard the front door. Turning around, the protagonist shouted to the guys not to come in here under any circumstances. The protagonist looked fearfully at the Shanu girl. There was silence in the room for a moment. Gathering his thoughts, the protagonist called out quietly to his girlfriend by name. Linmo noticed that Shanna still recognized her name. It meant that she had retained some of her consciousness. After a brief pause, the protagonist decided to call Shanna by name. Suddenly, Shanna became very angry and ran at the protagonist with a scream. The main man managed to bounce to the side. Shanna's girlfriend pounded the wall with all her might. Ling Mo calmly told his girlfriend standing next to him to subdue Shanyu. The guys stood near the door and heard the sounds of a strong struggle inside. Lu was very worried if his girlfriend Shania was okay. Suddenly, the noise outside the door died down. The Lu guy said excitedly that they needed to check on their friends. The guy with the glasses reminded his friend that the main character had forbidden them to come in. Lu went to the door and asked the protagonist, "Is everything okay in there?" Linmo replied that he was fine. The protagonist told the guys to guard the door. He could handle it. Meanwhile, the main character's girlfriend was holding back the Shanu. Linmo looked at Shanyu carefully. He decided that if nothing was done, they would all end up getting hurt. After some thought, the protagonist decided to establish a spiritual connection with the girl Shania. The guy began the procedure of creating a spiritual bond. He grabbed the magical thread coming from his head. The protagonist extended a thread of magical connection to the head of the Shani girl. The main character was able to merge his consciousness with the head of the Shani girl. Shanna opened her eyes and looked at the protagonist in surprise. She asked, "What is going on here?" The main character was surprised and delighted because his girlfriend Shanna can talk. Shanna was repeating her name to herself. The main character asked her girlfriend excitedly if she remembered her name. The girl was lying there staring blankly in front of her. She kept repeating her name to herself. Suddenly, Shanna screamed loudly that she had a very bad headache. The protagonist shouted to the girlfriend to hold the Shanna there. He wanted to connect with the girl by his spiritual thread. Elian held the girl Shanu with all her might to keep her from jumping up. The protagonist extended his spiritual thread to the head of the Shani girl. Then the protagonist closed his eyes, and it was as if he had traveled to another dimension. Lin Mo appeared in a different fairy tale garb in the mind of the girl Shanna. The protagonist turned around and found the girl. Shanna was sitting with her hair loose, surrounded by a bright light. After that, the protagonist flew up to Shanna. He realized that the girl's spiritual power was mixed up. The protagonist thought that inside the Shani, two different consciousnesses were colliding with each other. The girl cried out menacingly. Lin Mo decided that Shanna might have a split personality. Lin Mo directed his threads against the girl. He had to be sure to break through. The magical threads from the protagonist crashed into the reddish threads surrounding the Shanyu girl. In the end, the magical spiritual thread from the protagonist was unable to make its way to the girl Shane. The protagonist shrieked and called out the girl's name. He launched another thread at her. A magical blue spiritual thread flew in the direction from the protagonist to the Shanna girl. The Shanna girl screamed very loudly. The main character looked at her very excitedly. The spiritual thread from the protagonist was able to break through and mesh with the thread from the Shani girl. The protagonist got her hands on the magical reddish thread that connected her to the Shania. Now there was a solid spiritual connection between the protagonist and his girlfriend Shania. The protagonist returned to the current reality. He collapsed exhausted. Lin Mo looked out the window and saw that it was already dark. He was amazed that time had flown by so quickly. The main character looked at his girlfriend and his girlfriend's girlfriend. He realized that he had succeeded because his spiritual power was great. At that time, the door opened and Lu's boyfriend walked in. He excitedly called out to his girlfriend Shanu. Shanna's girlfriend was completely calm. She turned around and looked at her friend. Liu ran to his girlfriend and grabbed her by the shoulders. He was glad Shanna hadn't become a zombie. The main character excitedly told the guy to leave his girlfriend alone. At that time, the Shanna girl got angry. Red lightning bolts came out of her eyes. Then Shanna's girlfriend threw the guy with all her might against the wall. Shanna ran up to her lying friend Lu and prepared to hit him. The guy got really scared. In a trembling voice, he called his girlfriend's name. The protagonist decided to stop Shanna and launched a spiritual thread against her. Ling Mo was able to grab the girl Shanu's spiritual thread and shouted at her to stop. Guy Lu asked, frightened by the protagonist, what happened to his girlfriend. Lin Mo said in a calm and reasonable voice that Shani had complications from the infection. Lin Mo was holding Shanna's hands. He realized that his current spiritual power was very weak to control his girlfriend and Shanna at the same time. He told Lu's boyfriend not to touch Shanna, otherwise she will fall into madness. Lu's boyfriend was very annoyed and surprised. He couldn't believe his girlfriend had become like this. The main character said that at least Shanna's girlfriend isn't dead and doesn't look like a Lu Xin. After a short pause, the guy Lu smiled at the protagonist and said that he was completely right. The main character looked at Shanna and thought she would have finished him off if he didn't know how to control zombies. The protagonist commanded his companions to go to bed while they could. It was late at night. Everyone was asleep. The main character was awake and sitting next to a girl with a Shanya. Lin Mo sat across from the girl on the bed. He asked the Shani if she recognized him. The girl stared blankly in front of her. The protagonist called her name again. Lin Mo saw the girl's hand twitch. He realized that Shanna was still reacting to his name. The protagonist looked at his girlfriend. He realized that Elian and Shani still had pieces of both their consciousnesses. Shani's consciousness was better preserved. The protagonist looked in the corner and noticed the sword of the Shanna girl standing there. At that time, a good idea came to his mind. Lin Mo took the sword in his hands and showed it to the Shane girl. He asked if she recognized him. Shanna was silent. She looked at the protagonist with a long and piercing gaze. After a long pause, the Shanna girl grabbed her sword from the protagonist's hands. The protagonist watched as Shanna sat up and held the sword in her hands. He realized that the girl remembered her weapon. The guy held out his hand to the Shane girl and told her to give him the sword. The Shanna girl jerked sharply and bounced sideways on the bed. Shanna sat in the corner with a frightened look. She was still hugging her sword. The protagonist was unpleasantly astonished. He didn't understand why the girl needed that katana. Angry, the protagonist shouted menacingly to his girlfriend to give him the sword. Shanna's girlfriend retaliated by stabbing the guy in the face with her foot. Linmo was unpleasantly surprised. The protagonist froze. The Shani girl's foot was still on his face. There was an awkward pause. Shanna looked at the guy lying beside her without any emotion. The girl hit the protagonist and he fell on his back. His nose was broken. Shanna's girlfriend looked at the protagonist. She was scared and worried. The protagonist thought to himself, "It's better to believe in something than to be a crazy walking dead man." The protagonist stood up and walked over to the wall. He felt a strong decline in strength. Linmo was sitting on the floor. He told his girlfriend who came over that he was very tired. Elian hooked up with her friend. The protagonist told the girlfriend quietly that they needed to rest. The night flew by quickly. The sun rose and the day came. In the room with the protagonist, there was a knock on the door. A guy with glasses banged on the door and shouted excitedly that he was here with urgent messages. Linmo opened the door and asked grudgingly to the guy, "What happened?" A student with glasses shouted happily that he had just seen people on the street. Linmo wondered if there might be survivors here. He shouted that they needed to check if there were any more survivors outside. Outside, a group of people were taking cover behind wrecked cars against a herd of zombies. The guy with the armband shouted for the first and second team to hold the defense. He ordered the third and fourth to cover the flank. One of the survivors swung a shovel at the zombie who had approached him. The guy with the axe commanded his friend that the next monster was already on him. The guy was chopping zombies with an axe. He was shouting to his friends to hold on and wait for an opportunity to break through. The main character was watching everything that was going on from the window. He found the battle of humans against zombies interesting. Linmo noticed that half of the people were dealing with the zombies and the rest were covering the flanks. Individually, the survivors might be weak. Together, they were a threat to the zombies. The protagonist thought to himself, satisfied that this is what he calls the team of survivors. One of the men on the street finished fighting and threw his axe to the ground. The guy in the bandage yelled to his friends to retreat. The first and second team, he yelled to cover them. Lu Guy commands the main character that the people from the street go into the house and lead a crowd of zombies behind them. The frustrated and surprised protagonist yelled that it looked like he was being bullied. The men with weapons stood at the top of the stairs and prepared to repel the monster's onslaught. People started hitting the approaching zombies with shovels and other weapons. One of the guys asked his friend named Liu, what should they do next? The guy replied for everyone to go to the room as fast as possible. He kicked the door to the nearest room with his shoulder. There they prepared to take cover. Liu shouted to the rest of the men to hurry inside. An angry mob of zombies wanted to break into the room where the survivors were hiding. The guy was struggling to fight off the monsters attacking him. He was screaming for help. The protagonist stood by the door and listened intently to what was going on nearby. Liu asked the protagonist with great excitement, what should they do now? Linmo said that people want to take a break in this house and run for the other side. The Liu guy was very surprised. He asked the guy where is the other side of the house. The main character explained that their building is closest to the gate. There is an artificial lake in their path. There are several buildings on one side of the other. In between the building and there are empty places where they can hide from zombies. Linmo explained to his friend that this was the reason he had chosen this house as a shelter yesterday. The boy stood and excitedly heard cries for help coming from the hallway. The main character asked the guy Lu, are the survivors already here? Lu said they need to help other people. The main character shouted excitedly that there were at least 30 zombies behind the door, and they couldn't help people if they opened the door. Lu guy thought for a bit and said sadly to the protagonist that he was completely right. Linmo took a rope out of his backpack. He said they had to escape and the best way was through the window. Lu was surprised at the suggestion. The protagonist commanded his girlfriend and Shanna to go ahead and clear the area. Both girls ran to fulfill the protagonist's request in a flash oka. The guy watching the girls jumping through the window yelled that they were on the 4th floor. Both girls jumped out the window and landed together on the air conditioning. Very quickly the girls, jumping on the air conditioners from top to bottom, were on Earth. Guy Lu was very much amazed to see how deftly the girls descended from the top floor. Lian stood next to the Shania girl. They noticed a crowd of dangerous zombies in front of them. The zombies menacingly screamed and roared. They prepared to attack the girls. The monsters accelerated and ran towards the standing Shana girls and Ilianas. Suddenly, something hit the zombies very hard. They stopped and looked up in surprise. The zombies saw the girls become huge and very formidable with the help of a spell. The Shana girl activated her magic skills and started striking the zombies. Both girls were able to chop all the zombies around them to pieces very quickly. Shanna and Elian's girls were the two of them running around and bravely smiting the monsters around them. Liu's boyfriend was very much amazed and pleased as the girls covered their retreat. The protagonist realized that there was no time to delay and he threw the rope down from the window, after which the protagonist told his friends that it was their turn. Liu Boy looked down and said fearfully that the rope is very short. Linmo replied that there is a flower bed below, so they will not die from falling. The main character looked up and told the guys it was up to them to jump or not. He'd only wait 2 minutes. The boys listened fearfully as a herd of dangerous zombies burst through the door of their room. Then one monster smashed the door with a very powerful blow and broke into the room. The guy with the glasses excitedly shouted to his friend Lou that they should now definitely jump. The boy hurried his friend Lou and shouted that he could be lunch for the monsters. He was scared, but he was cheering himself up. Lou, with his eyes closed, very frightened, slid down the rope to the bottom. The guy landed safely on the ground. His friend and protagonist was standing next to him. Standing next to the main character was his girlfriend. Lin Mo told the guys that they needed to get up since they didn't have much time, at which time the zombies from the building started jumping from the floors down to get to the people. The monsters piled on top of each other on the ground. They started to get up to get to their prey. A fierce mob of zombies were marching towards the people with loud screams. Shanna's girl started getting angry. The protagonist noticed her eyes turning red. Lin Mo thought that Shanna was getting out of control. It could have been because she had killed a lot of zombies. The protagonist looked at the girl. He realized he needed to tighten his control now. The protagonist turned to his friends and yelled that they needed to run forward. Lin Mo and his companions ran after them, followed by a crowd of zombies. The protagonist shouted excitedly to his friends to hurry up and run. The Lu guy shouted to the protagonist that further in front of them was a crowd of survivors. Lin Mo noticed a crowd of people in front of him who were chopping down monsters. He said that the survivors were advancing quickly. The protagonist commanded his companions that they should take a detour and not get into a fight. The main character noticed a whole bunch of zombies getting in their way. The monsters were coming at the protagonist and his companions with a thunderous roar. Lin Mo said to get rid of the zombies. Lin Mo rushed with his girlfriend to fight against the invading monsters, while the Lee boy and the other survivors were axing the monsters. After the battle, the guy looked around and saw a whole bunch of chopped-up zombies. A guy came up and told me there was someone fighting nearby. Li Yu's boyfriend turned around and saw that there were indeed more survivors fighting the zombies next to them. The protagonist confidently stabbed one of the monsters with his dagger. A Lian girl kicked the monster in the head with a flying kick. Shanna was standing next to her. Students with their kitchen knives were slashing the zombies running up to them. Li Yu looked at the protagonist and his friends with admiration. He said they were not bad at fighting. Then Li Yu commanded his friends to help the protagonist. Gai Lu said cheerfully that other survivors were coming to their aid. Lin Yu told his friend to stay focused. Very soon, all the surrounding monsters were chopped up and destroyed. The protagonist stood with his companions. Around them lay a pile of dead zombies. Gai Li Yu approached the protagonist from behind and said that he was very strong, was able to kill many zombies, and didn't even break a sweat. Li Yu asked cheerfully to the main character if he lived in the house next door. He suggested that Ling Mo and his friends go to the camp with them. The protagonist excitedly asked, "What camp are we talking about?" Li Yu said they had set up a survivors camp. The protagonist looked at the exhausted boys. He thought to himself that ever since his girlfriend and Shanna had become zombies, the guys had become a burden to him. Lin Mo thought that although Lu was very skinny, he wasn't bad. He decided to find a place to leave this guy. The protagonist asked his new acquaintance Li Yu, "Where is their camp?" Li Yu replied that it was not far away. Li Yu once again suggested the main character to go along with him. He added that their boss would like them. The protagonist took a cap out of his backpack. He told Li Yu to show them the way. After that, the protagonist put a cap on the head of Shanna's girlfriend. At this time, the Shanna was calm and silent. A cap with ears covered the girl's head. The protagonist thought that Shanna was calm now, but she would be better disguised. Li Yu then led the protagonist and his companions to a huge and enclosed house. Li Yu told his new acquaintances that they had already arrived. The protagonist looked around and said everything around looked good. There was a guy with binoculars sitting by the window. Li Yu said they take shifts on outings. The guys monitoring the situation will always warn you if something goes wrong. Li Yu climbed the ladder and said their camp was on the second floor. In case of danger, they would remove the ladder and the zombies would not be able to reach them. The girl with the glasses was recording the information that the second team had returned with 2 dead. The girl commanded the 2 boys to put the supplies in the corner of the room. The main character asked his new friend, "What does the girl do?" Li Yu explained that the girl records all the losses and gains. They have 3 teams in total. The girl commanded the boys to properly distribute the food and supplies. The girl went up to one guy and told him not to pack so many cigarettes anymore. The protagonist thought to himself cheerfully that the camp was small but very good. Liu told the main character that he would take him to their boss. He would be happy to see Lingmo. There was a girl sitting inside the room. She was busy licking a lollipop. Without turning around, the girl asked Li to introduce the newcomers to her. Liu walked into the room and greeted Sister Lin with great surprise. Sister Lin was sitting on a chair. She said that it took Liu 3 days to gather supplies. She already thought that he had died somewhere along the way. The Liu guy said conciliatory to the Lin girl that he would introduce the new guests to her now. Liu showed the protagonist a female warden of their camp named Lin. The protagonist was very surprised. He realized he knew the camp director. The Lin girl at this time turned around very quickly in her chair. After that, Lin threw her feet with her shoes on the table. The protagonist realized who was now in front of him. The camp director was a girl Wang Lin, a friend of the protagonist.